Hello and welcome back to your friendly neighborhood podcast, Creative Differences. I'm Dallas, and I wish Ridley Scott would just go sit down somewhere.
I'm Colin, and it's funny. I tried to watch a Ridley Scott movie just the other day. It's a weird thing where I almost feel glad that it's not my vibe because then I can feel justified in being like, yeah, Ridley Scott, go take a nap.
Yeah, I hate when someone whose work I really enjoy is saying stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in fairness, there are Ridley Scott movies that I really enjoy, so there's kind of that. But you made Whites of Egypt, so I feel completely comfortable telling you to go sit your ass down.
It's a different movie altogether. And I'm Demi, and it took me almost 3 hours to get Spider-Man tickets for this upcoming weekend. Welcome
Boy.
to another episode of the Creative Differences podcast, your one-stop shop for movie reviews, Fancast Fridays, Throwback Thursdays, and a number of other pop culture-related items like we're doing today. If you couldn't tell, because nobody's opening except mine had anything to do with what we're doing today. Usually we would do a Throwback Thursday today, but our first ever episode was actually for Spider-Man Far From Home. So you guys can check that out.
What?
Yeah, that's how we started.
That's how we started.
Wow.
So you guys can actually go check that out if you want to after this episode is over. No, today what we're going to do is a Top 5 Tuesday. Today we're going to give you guys our top 5 favorite Spider-Man movies in honor of the release of Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. You guys probably will hear the most controversial top 5 Spider-Man list that you've ever heard or read in your life.
Okay, that's a lot to live up to.
Also, few things. Retraction. Ridley Scott did not make Whites of Egypt. He made Exodus, Whites, and Kings.
Yes.
The other Egyptian movie.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, that's the wrong one.
Yeah, Gods of Egypt. But didn't it also have white people in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one also had Chadwick
He made
in
a
it.
different.
Wild.
He made a different whitewashed Egyptian movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Gods of Egypt was like about the actual gods of
Right,
Egypt,
like-
and Exodus was about the book of Exodus.
The dudes. None of whom were white. So if you're wondering where Gabby is, I asked her to be in this episode, and she said, I don't really rock with y'all like that. So she's not here.
That is not what happened at all.
Were you there?
I
You were
know.
there?
That's.
You don't
I know you put it in the chat. You asked in the chat.
This is
Every
separate.
time you
This is
asked
other
it,
than
no,
that.
you
This is-
didn't do
this
that.
is
That's
outside
not
of
what
that.
happened.
This is outside
That's
the
not
chat.
what happened.
You don't
That's
know.
not what happened.
Prove it.
Gabby, I love you even if they don't.
Who said we
Who
don't love her?
say?
Who said we don't love her?
Sorry, even if Dallas doesn't.
Who said I don't love her? Did I say, Gabby, I don't love you?
To me is blameless, but Dallas.
I said, Gabby
walking
said
a thin line.
she don't really rock with us like that.
All right, guys, let's get started. Before we actually start giving you guys our ranking, here's the method of how we do it in case you've never heard any of our rankings before. What we do here at Creative Differences is we go through in order saying what our number 5, our number 4, our number 3, our number 2, up until our number 1. If it is higher up on somebody's list, they will call skip and we will wait until it's at its highest point to talk about it.
Again, before we get into everything, please like, please subscribe, please rate, please review. Because,
And tell us your Spider-Man ranking.
yeah, we need that. We need to know what side of the fence you fall on, like me and Demi or Colin. We'll get into that later. But, yeah, people are treating Spider-Man tickets like new Jordans. And I feel like if we were notable movie reviewers, we wouldn't have to deal with that.
I was
So
really...
please help us get there.
It caught me off guard because the only time I've waited that long in a line, like for a digital ticket, was when I got in line for Hamilton, and that was for like everybody in the
Right.
group.
Yeah.
And it's also Hamilton.
Right. Like that was
Yeah.
a huge thing. Like this is just the next Spider-Man movie. Oh man. Anyway, let's get to it.
All right, number 5.
I mean, did either of you do honorable mentions?
I did
For,
actually.
like,
You know what?
No.
Yeah, let's start
your
with an
other
honorable
3?
mention.
Okay.
Not
What is-
for a list that only
It's
has.
top 5 and bottom 3.
Yeah, well, I have an honorable mention because it's higher up in the,
So you're like a
it
top
was
5
close.
and then that number and then the bottom 2.
Well, no, it's a bottom 1.
You have a
It
That's
was
fair. I'm the same.
like, it was super close to
Okay.
being in the top 5, but it
Gotcha.
just didn't crack the list, and I want to give it some mention.
Okay.
And that would be The Amazing Spider-Man.
Nice.
Just want to, that's an honorable mention. Also, Andrew Garfield is the most attractive Spider-Man, in my opinion. So,
No, that's just objectively correct.
I'm not. Colin is always getting on me about saying objective things. So I'm not going to say objective things. In my opinion, Andrew Garfield is the most attractive Spider-Man. So I want to give him a shout out because he's great.
He's a great Spider-Man. Like, in terms of attractiveness, they're all just white dudes to me. But
You're not attracted to men.
I'm not the
so
target
it's-
audience.
It's okay.
You white, you Spider-Man. All right, number 5.
That's not fair to Miles.
Ooh. If you white, you Peter Parker. Better?
What?
Yes, there you go.
You white, you Peter Parker.
All whites are Peter Parker?
Yes.
How's that?
All right, number 5.
What?
Speaking of Peter Parker, my number 5
We
is
speak of Peter Parker a lot.
Spider-Man.
Skip.
Okay.
Colin.
Colin is your number 5. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Spider-Man.
Skip.
All right. Demi,
Cool.
number 5.
My number 5 is Spider-Man 2.
Skip.
Nice.
Oh my god.
This is amazing. Dallas.
Oh, God. My number 4 is Spider-Man 2.
Cool. I think that's
Go ahead.
it.
I love it.
Cool. Great.
It's
Spider-Man
so
2.
much fun. Oh, man. Remember they used to happen on our recaps a lot? Like, I would skip someone and then say the movie right after them.
Yeah.
I love it. It's my favorite thing.
That's literally what just happened.
Yeah, it's so great.
I said Spider-Man 2 got skipped, and now you said Spider-Man 2. So let's talk about Spider-Man 2.
Let's talk about Spider-Man 2.
Which
It
is, to most people, the best Spider-Man movie.
many people, yes. Many people consider it the best Spider-Man movie.
Which is why I said these lists might be controversial.
Right. We are not those people. But,
listen.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna put this right at the top. I'm gonna assume we all have the same number 1.
Yes.
And we are objectively correct.
Yes.
That's just fact.
Yes.
Cool. Anyway, keep going.
We're
Right,
all in
right,
agreement on that.
Yeah.
Also, I can't fight the urge to say who directed and wrote movies. I'm going to do it for all of them,
Go ahead.
except for Homecoming, because they have half a dozen writers. I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to do the whole, they did this and they did that, because
Yeah.
there's
That's a
6 of them.
It'll take days.
Yeah, Spider-Man 2, directed by Sam Raimi and written by Alvin Sargent. Sam Raimi directed Spider-Man. And The Evil Dead, Army of Darkness. He's directing or directed Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I
Yeah.
don't know if that movie's done, because I don't keep up with that stuff.
I think they're done with production. I think they're in post right now.
All right, good job, Sam. And Alvin Sargent wrote Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man. So he's written a lot of Spider-Man movies.
So he did 2, 3.
2,
and
3,
Amazing?
amazing, and he's uncredited as a writer for the first one. So he's been.
Oh,
all over
wow.
these.
Okay.
Yeah, he been there. All right, so audience, you guys might not know, we did 2 Spider-Man marathons.
We did.
We did
Mhm.
one for Toby's and then one for Andrew's.
And we did them recently, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like super recently.
These are fresh off in our minds.
Yeah. First of all, that was super fun. I'm so
Oh
glad
my
we
God,
Had
did
a
it was
that.
so
great
good.
time with you guys.
We
So
need to do
amazing.
more of those.
We do.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
My list did not change ultimately.
Oh,
But,
wow.
Yeah.
This actually did change on my list.
Yeah, mine didn't, but I came close to changing some things because the first 2 Spider-Man movies are always like neck and neck for me,
Yeah.
but I've always
Mm.
had Spider-Man 2 just a bit higher. And the things, like the reasons maintain themselves. Like Doc Ock,
Great villain.
great. Like Green Goblin was dope, but Doc Ock, he's so good. And the action scenes that are, I guess, allowed with a character like that,
Mm.
they did them so well. Shout out to Sam Raimi. He really did his thing. The train scene, one of the best Spider-Man action scenes, despite the fact that it ends with, he's just a kid, as they stand over this 32-year-old man. Phil Lamar's in there. Like, that's not really a mark of the movie's quality, but for me it is because I love Phil Lamar. It's so good. It's just so good.
This actually switched for me
Okay.
because Spider-Man 2 was actually initially my number 4 when I was basing it off of like, I haven't seen these movies since I was a child.
Right.
And I think that was partially because everybody and their mama is like Spider-Man 2 is the best one. So I just kind of was like, oh, okay, Spider-Man 2 then is number 4. Or number 5. Or no, yeah, it was number 4 on my list.
Right.
But yeah, watching it again, like still a fantastic movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Raimi movies feel a lot more like they're diving into the comic booky nature of things a lot more.
Yeah.
There are things that are allowed to be quite silly.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
that's
it's
the
okay.
thing, is I feel like the MCU and the DC movies, I feel like they have lost some of that. Like, in adapting the comic books, they're also sort of stripping them of some of their silliness. Because
Mhm.
comic books, I feel like, are always inherently silly, even when they're not trying to be. Like, I read some Batman comics recently.
Mhm.
I read The Death of the Family, which is widely considered to be really good.
Okay.
Where Joker is torturing Batman, and like he confronts him with like the skinned off faces of his
Oh,
Bat
that
family.
one. Yeah, that was rough.
That's silly. Oh yeah, is it scary? Sure, but it's also silly as shit. And it's like, I feel like one of the reasons I appreciate the Raimi trilogy is that it lets things be silly when they're silly, and that's okay. And I feel like there's a difference between this thing is silly as opposed to like the MCU, which is mostly serious with jokes. I don't know how to explain it, but it does.
Like the
there's-
tone isn't like as
yes,
silly.
Like I think
overall.
about Spider-Man 1
Mhm.
with Goblin in the building on fire.
I love it.
I just like,
We'll get to that in a little bit.
but like Spider-Man 2, it's fun. And like,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I like that kind of from the jump in Spider-Man 1, Norman Osborn is a bit of a dick. But like,
Mhm.
I like that Doc Ock isn't. Like, he's just a dude
Yeah, he's
trying
a
to
nice
do
guy
science.
who turns
Right, and like
into a villain.
he turns because the things are controlling his brain. Like
right,
it's,
like he's affected and becomes a villain. It's not just like, I'm bad now.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
something happened to you, and you lost your wife. So even if that didn't happen to you, like,
and by the
It
end
was
he
his
comes
fault.
back around.
yeah, it was his fault, but that doesn't mean he's not gonna be upset about it.
Yeah, be upset about it, but it ain't nobody else's fault but yours.
I'm just saying
Well,
the fact that
don't
can
bl-
be a villain origin.
Don't
story.
blame them.
I mean, like it is. It's his
his
fault,
fault.
but it's not direct. He didn't throw the glass into her face.
Right. It
You
was a
know.
result of something he did. He didn't.
Right. It
Murder
was
her.
his choice to be like, no, I can control it. Like, no, you can't.
Power of the sun.
But
I just think Spider-Man 2 is a really great story. Sam Raimi definitely had like a handle on the character for a time. And it's not his fault. It's a great movie, like everybody says. The train scene hits. Doc Ock is a fantastic villain. Like all the reasons that people say Spider-Man 2 is a great film, I agree with. Yeah, it's a fantastic film. And that's why it's a lot of people's number ones or number twos.
Speaking of Sam Raimi, that horror influence, the scene when the doctor's trying to operate on Doc Ock
Yes.
is
Yeah.
a horror movie. Like, it's
It
straight
is.
up a scene from a horror movie.
We had a good
He
time.
drags a woman screaming and
With her
clawing
nails, yeah.
into the shadows.
And I think I looked away
love-
from the screen because the nails thing I have nails like that. So it's just
Yeah.
I can't no.
And nails scratching has always been one of my
it's a bad sound.
it's the worst. Like, if I have a misophonia trigger, it's that. So I hate that, but I love it from a cinematic standpoint. Like, ooh, that's really good. And then the guy like lifting the chainsaw like Ash versus Evil Dead. Like, it's Sam Raimi does his thing, and I like his flavor.
I feel like the downside to Raimi's movies are like the romantic side of it.
Oh, Mary Jane is such a hoe in these movies.
It was funny though because in this movie I was like, girl, just go with the astronaut. Why? Girl,
Right.
choose the astronaut.
Right.
so
He's so
strange.
like he's just a dude. As far as I remember, there's nothing in that movie that makes him out to be a bad dude.
Nope.
No.
She's just not satisfied.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, and it's like you could have a life with him.
I do like stories of here's a girl who has a guy who's absolutely perfect for her, but he's just not the one. That's fine.
Okay.
But this movie, I think it's just because of Peter. Just like Peter ain't it, guys.
I don't know if I honestly wish that I would have counted and done the math. I feel like most of the kisses Mary Jane has, she's dating another person at the time of the kiss in this trilogy.
Okay.
Even the most iconic one, the upside down,
she-
which I guess we'll get to.
who's
She's
she
dating
dating?
someone at that. She's with
She's
Harry,
Harry.
when she kisses Spider-Man.
She's with Harry.
And then I think in this one,
She's
I'm getting mixed up. We'll save that.
wait.
for
Did she
Spider-Man.
kiss him in two, Peter?
She asks him to.
She kissed Peter.
The-
It's so the movies all blend together at a certain
Yeah,
point.
that's the problem.
The MJ stuff blends together because it's just, MJ's dating someone and now she's kissing someone else.
Well,
Okay. And that's never been a thing for MJ. Like
Oh.
in comics and cartoons, I've never known MJ to just be a trollop out here in the streets. So why did you, like, Raimi, what's going on? It's just a mess.
It's a
And
mess.
then she's dating an astronaut and then she still wants Peter. But she doesn't want Peter.
The astronaut is also played by Daniel Gillies, which, by the way, this movie definitely earns bonus points for Daniel Gillies being in it. I love him from the originals.
it's also just like
I would have chose the astronaut.
also it just frustrates me that the way she figures out that this ain't it is she tries to replicate the upside down kiss to see if she feels the same. Like
Girl, the context is different.
that's not right. It was an entirely different context, an entirely different man. Wait, what?
You got to have experiences
Go.
with different people that are different.
You
bro.
have to be able to kiss me upside down and for it to like make my stomach flutter or whatever. This ain't it. MJ, what are you doing?
The writers did not do justice to MJ.
No, not at all. This is very disappointing.
Poor MJ.
Right?
But we should move on to that was your number 4.
That was my
That
number
was
4.
Spider-Man 2.
Yes.
All right.
Colin, your number 4?
Let me pull up my list. My number 4 is Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Nice. Let's
Very
get
nice.
into it.
I'm so glad that Colin is different because 2/3 of my bottom 3 of these 8 is movies I like.
Exactly.
And that movies that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to get to talk about all of them because Colin and I are so different in
Yeah.
how we rank things.
Yeah. Me and Dallas also, we knew our lists were very similar. So
Yeah.
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 we were both sad. We were like, oh no, we're not going to be able to talk about The Amazing Spider-Man.
Surprise, bitch.
We love it. Thank you, Colin.
Like Amazing Spider-Man 2
It's good fun.
as a movie, I think it does a little too much.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
Like by the time we were watching it and by the time we got to the end, I was exhausted. But
And
We
there's
had
a
jumped
lot.
around so much.
oh, there's just so much in it. But Andrew Garfield is so good.
Oh,
He's
I love
fantastic.
him.
And his chemistry with Emma Stone as
Yes.
Gwen Stacy is Oh my god, they're just so good together.
It's crazy because we were just talking about like the issues with like the writing of MJ's romances in the first trilogy. Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. Oh my gosh. Like immediately off the jump, just so good.
It's
so
great.
much better. Top tier. Even though she dies at the end of this second movie, like you feel horrible about it. Because you love, it's not just you love that Peter loves Gwen. You love Gwen as well because Gwen is a great person as well. Outside of Peter.
Yeah.
And they made you feel it despite the fact that if you're into Spider-Man comics,
yes,
her death is as predictable as Uncle Ben's.
Yeah.
In a situation where Green Goblin shows up and takes her to a tall place, it's like, oh, they're going to kill her.
Yeah.
It's also interesting, for me because I haven't read a lot of Spider-Man comics, but if I know anything, I know that Spider-Man ends up with Mary Jane.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, there is a part of me that watches, Amazing Spider-Man and goes, well, why are you doing this Gwen Stacy thing? That's something I always get frustrated with. It's like, if I know that two characters are going to end up together, then when you have them in other relationships, it's like, why are you wasting my time? But at the same time, it's weird that we never got a third Andrew Garfield movie. I wish we had. But it's like, I would have wanted him to just keep being with Gwen because they were just so good.
They were great together.
Not only that, like, I don't know how I feel about Electro. I like Electro. I don't really like Max.
Yeah,
I think is how I would say it.
It's the same for me.
It's a really weird transition.
I love Jamie Foxx.
He's great.
Oh, he's great.
He performed fantastically with everything he was given. I do like Electro. He looks cool. I like the little reverb in his voice.
Yeah.
People
I
who
like that he
complain
doesn't have
about
the goofy star face.
his look, I like his look.
I like
It looks very cool.
To me, if you asked me to design someone based on electricity, that's probably something I would go for, probably a blue look, just because I think that looks cool.
Yeah. To touch on something that you said earlier, Colin, I don't think comics are inherently silly or like usually silly. I think there's an overall silliness to a lot of things that comics do. But like the thing you described from Batman and Joker, for me, that feels less silly and more terrifying. I think because I've seen stuff like Mindhunter and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So like the concept of someone removing someone else's body parts is
grotesque,
grounded in a way that I really wish it wasn't. So for me, that doesn't feel silly. It feels, oh no, this is like some Ed Gein stuff.
See, I think in this case, the reason it felt silly to me was because he literally presented them on ice, as
his
dishes.
presentation
like, okay,
was silly.
Dude,
He did it
right.
like he was, the first course is served.
Face.
Yeah, Joker is silly. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so I like the way that. Also, shout out to Mark Webb who directed this movie.
Yeah, looking
I
forward
like
to
the
Snow
way-
White.
Yeah, that they took stuff from the comics like Electro and on one hand made it less silly, but on the other hand, like Max, everything with Max feels very silly.
He gets turned by eels.
Evil eels? Like they
Well,
look
it's like-
evil.
What did the eels have to? Because he falls into the tank, and I
Yes.
thought the tank was the thing, but then the eels bite him, and that's what does it.
Well, it's the tank of eels, so I guess
But
The
so
eels
the
are the
tank
thing.
is just water, but then the eels are like augmented or something.
I don't know.
it's Oscorp. I guess we just assume that the eels are some kind of
Evil.
evil, but like
Sure.
enhanced eels. I don't know. It
Like
was
the
a weird-
spiders.
Yeah, they experiment on things because why else do they have a tank full of eels?
Oh,
To
also,
power the building.
What a wild way to power your building. It's the tank of eels.
I don't like Dane DeHaan as a person.
Do you know anything about this man?
No, his presence scares me. I don't
Okay,
like
well,
it.
don't say you don't like him as a person.
I don't like him.
You're off. You're
I-
unsettled by him,
I am unsettled by him.
which is
That
fair.
said, I like what he does in this movie, and I like the angle of like Harry is dying,
Mm.
and that's why he's doing what he's doing. He's not just like out to get power or whatever. Like
Right. He's trying to
has-
save himself.
right. I don't necessarily like how he looks at the end.
For me, Electro and Max, it's an opposite effect with Harry and Goblin. Because I like Harry.
Yes,
I don't
don't
like
like
Goblin.
Goblin.
I don't like what they
Yes.
did with him as Goblin.
I'm with
I don't
you
really
there.
like or enjoy Max. I don't really like the sad sack type of characters.
Me neither,
who
yeah.
Their whole character,
He's sad.
like,
just
the
gets
trait
beaten
is just
down.
they're sad and their life is sad and everything
Yeah.
bad happens to
Mhm,
them.
mhm.
So when he becomes Electro, he takes his power back and now he's cooler. I enjoy that. But
Yeah.
Harry seems pretty cool, at least in the way that he interacts with Peter and stuff
Mhm.
like that.
He's a homie.
Right. The way he comes into the board meeting and like, starts swagging on people. That's cool.
You can't call me Harry. Don't call me Harry.
No, it's
You're my-
Mr. Osborne.
Right. It's
You
Mr.
don't know
Osborne.
me like that.
You're
We don't
my
hang out on the
lawyer.
weekend.
Shout out to Felicity Jones because she would have made a fantastic Black Cat.
I'm so disappointed that we didn't get to see that. I love Black Cat for plenty of reasons.
Would they have put her in a white wig?
Canonically, Black Cat wears a white wig. Her hair's
Oh.
not white.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Black Cat is blonde, typically, Felicia Hardy.
Oh.
But yeah, the wig is white. It's not her real hair.
I just figured it was because comics.
Yeah. But it makes more sense that it's a disguise.
That's what Black Canary used to do too. She actually initially her hair was black and she used to wear a blonde wig,
Interesting.
and
Oh.
then they changed it somewhere down the line
I
that
did
she's
not know
just
that.
as blonde.
This has
I'm
been to me
gonna
with your
be-
daily Black Canary facts.
I try, guys. I do try.
I wonder because, like, you know, as nerds are bound to do, people are still theorizing over the No Way Home is the new one.
Yes, No
Yeah.
Way Home.
The
is
No
coming
Way
out this
Home
week.
trailer, and like, what if Dane DeHaan's Goblin is in it? And like, Dane DeHaan's Goblin? We need both. That's a lot of Goblin.
We definitely don't need both.
I do love Dane DeHaan though. He's so great, and he brings something.
He's a very good actor.
He's very good at playing villains. If you've seen
He's a villain
Chronicle,
face.
That's the thing, is his unsettling nature works super well for Harry.
yeah, but
I
like
just wanna see him play
if
someone
you've
happy.
seen Chronicle, where he
Right.
kind of plays a sad sack, as you were mentioning earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and he just becomes a villain. He's so good at it. His acting is so great.
Yeah.
And he makes it believable. I think the one thing about Spider-Man 2 that frustrates me is the whole parent storyline that I guess would have eventually would have come to an end maybe in the third movie.
Peter's parents?
Yeah.
Because it's weird. I don't like the bloodline thing, because then it's like,
Oh, I forgot about that.
because kind of the point of superheroes in general, and Spider-Man is like anybody could have been bitten by the spider and could have become the spider person.
Mm.
But then this is like, no, you have to be genetically related to Richard Park. It's like, that's not.
Where's Miles going to come into this?
Why does he have a magical bloodline all of a sudden? Like, I don't,
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it so much. I think it's an interesting direction to take it. I also don't really like the parent storyline because, like you said earlier, this movie does too much.
Yeah.
So much is happening.
And this movie could have been so many movies. Paul Giamatti is there in the beginning and the end, but that's it.
Oh, right.
That was a setup for Sinister Six.
Right, and they're
And it's
setting
similar-
up Sinister Six this
Yeah.
whole time kind of in the background.
It's weird. He's similar to Gal Gadot in Batman vs. Superman, where she's there to kind of set up Justice League is coming. He's there to set up that the Sinister Six was coming.
Right.
We never got the Sinister Six.
It's just so silly. Shout out to Paul Giamatti. He goes for it, but man,
That he
Also-
do.
what were you doing?
Electro almost feels like a secondary villain because there is so much going on.
Yeah, because he kind of takes a background role because Harry goes to get him. We get Electro's big showdown, and then that feels like the end of a superhero movie.
Right.
But then Goblin
then we
shows
still have
up
all the Goblin
separately,
stuff.
and he gets his own. And
he
it's
does
just,
the Gwen Stacy thing.
Why weren't you guys fighting him together?
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. I need your help.
I think the reason why we like this movie so much is Andrew Garfield is great. Spider-Man.
He's fantastic.
So good.
And
Emma
I like
Stone
all
is
the
great
performances.
as Gwen. Yeah, the performances
Yeah.
are great.
Yeah.
The
Even,
characters are
like,
cool.
Even though I don't like the cartoonish Russian version of Paul Giamatti, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His performance was very entertaining.
What I love about the Amazing Spider-Man movies is the same reason people love the Spider-Man 2 train scene. You know, it's super inspiring. I feel like whenever they do that for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, I feel it so much more. Like when he stops being Spider-Man at the end of the movie and then he comes to the kid out in the street. I feel it. And
I
then,
love that
Yeah.
scene so much.
you know, the first movie as well, when they've got the cranes and stuff overhead,
Oh,
the people helping
yeah.
him up. I don't know, man. Those inspiring moments I think really hit in the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
They do.
And I think
They
part
do.
of that is because Andrew Garfield had such an understanding of the character of Spider-Man. He's loved this character for so long and is a
Mhm.
huge fan of the character and was putting his entire heart into playing Peter Parker. And I think he just got what it meant to be Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that he comes in at that last scene, when he comes into the kid behind you and says, "Hey, Spider-Man,
Yeah.
like you take care of your mama, take care of this guy." And it's just so great and so inspiring. And I don't know why people don't like this movie. It's so, I mean, I know why.
Yeah, there's a
From
lot.
like a story structure standpoint.
we definitely went through all the flaws of this
Yeah,
movie.
it could use a little work, but there's just so much about it that does work for me personally.
To me, it's like there's so much little stuff in it that I like. It outweighs the big, there's too much in this.
And the way I am with movies is I always see the flaws in whatever movie I'm watching. But for me, it's about whether those flaws are big enough that it's going to make me ignore the things I like.
Mhm.
Or if I like these things enough, I don't really worry about the story problems. The first scene with Electro in the city, that whole scene is great
Music
to me.
hits.
Oh my God, I want to get to that song, but
Hans
in
Zimmer.
a second. Yeah, Hans Zimmer did his thing. The shot of everyone running up the stairs and Spider-Man stopping everyone
Oh,
from
and
grabbing the
slow-mo and
metal
everything?
in slow-mo.
Mm.
That's dope. It has the silly Spider-Man quality. He has his little fireman hat on.
Yeah.
He's talking to everybody. He's doing his thing.
I stand by what I said. Andrew Garfield Spider-Man with Ryan Reynolds Deadpool would be incredible.
I would love that. Electro song.
They lied
To me. They hate on me. The fact that they hate on me.
Did he
is
compose that? Did he write that? How'd that work?
I don't know.
Well, Pharrell is also one of the composers on this film.
No, I'm saying
and
Electro.
Junkie XL.
Did Electro do that? Did he make that music play? Was it how?
That's his inner monologue.
That's it. Oh, it's so
good.
It's funny because every time I watch it, I hear the music first and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling it. And then I realize, like, oh, right, there are lyrics. And I'm like, what are they saying? He lied to me. He is my enemy. I was like, what are we doing?
Also, one of the things we were talking about how good of a Spider-Man Andrew Garfield is. One of the things about that scene that I love is that Spider-Man does very nearly de-escalate that entire situation.
He's really trying.
Yeah.
He's super good.
Love that.
And that's one of my favorite things is seeing superheroes do that. One of the things I always bring up, me and Kayla talk about all the time, is there's a scene in Justice League or Justice League Unlimited where the Flash is in Central City and he's de-escalating. I think his name is the Trickster. The guy's sitting at a bar and he's not really like wilding out or anything. But at the end of the day, like a lot of Batman's villains, this guy is a person with mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And Barry walks over to him. He's with, I think, Batman and one of the New Gods, and New God dude, played by Ron Perlman.
Hey.
He's going to walk over and just like, let's get him. And Barry's like, chill, man. No, it's Wally. Sorry, because Justice League had Wally. And he walks over and he's like, hey. And he calls him by his name. And he's like, have you been taking your meds? And he's talking to him like a person. And he's like, no, blah, blah, blah. And he's talking, he's like, hey, man, we had this agreement. Like, you can't be out here doing stuff like this. And then he just gets up. And then Trickster's like, you got me again, Flash. And he gives him a little thumbs up.
Oh.
And it's so great because, you don't have to just beat people into submission.
Yeah, Batman.
Yeah, police. Like, you can just de-escalate a situation. Not everything requires brute force. And I think that's great.
But anyway, yeah, that's The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Where are we?
We're
number
Demi's
4.
Fourth.
Demi's fourth.
Yeah, my number 4 is Spider-Man, the OG Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
All right.
So the only reason that Spider-Man is above Spider-Man 2 for me
Mm-hmm.
is that it's thematically, I like it more. I
Okay.
love the father-son storyline that they have going. I love Peter's father-son relationship with Ben
Mm-hmm.
Bitter.
being compared to Harry's relationship with Norman.
Right.
Also being compared to Peter's relationship with Norman as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like those juxtapositions. I love when things like thematically like come together in such a way that it fits so perfectly. And I think that Spider-Man does that really well. Again, Sam Raimi does a fantastic job directing. I think it's a fantastic origin story movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of the first films that made Hollywood realize that you could do a superhero film. It's like Blade, X-Men, and Spider-Man carried us into the age that we're currently in. The web slinging in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, and it's not just the original Spider-Man. I think I like it more than any other web slinging that we've seen in any of the other movies. There's something
interesting.
I don't know. I can't say what it is about it. Like there's something visceral and like there's something thrilling and you can feel it. I don't know what it is. And maybe, I don't know, somebody in the audience, maybe you guys can comment and say why you think that is. But for me, I really enjoy the web slinging in those first 3 films. I don't know if it's the acrobatics or if it's just the way that the camera movement is used to experience the web slinging, but it's really good.
Spider-Man 1 made it on my list and Spider-Man 2 didn't because it's sillier. I love Norman Osborn so much. Just
he's so great.
Everything he does, I can hear a drop of blood, a single drop of blood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick my finger in the sweet potatoes. Why? I don't know, because he's Norman. It's just like that scene in and of itself is just incredible. And the goblin in the building on fire,
that scream sound effect he uses, that freaking Party City scream box. I love it.
There's just
although
so
those movies did have an obsession with leaving children in fires for some reason.
Yeah, they did.
They really like fires.
They definitely
kids.
did. And I guess like it's a basic thing to save somebody from, so I get it, but you don't have to do it more than once.
And I feel like maybe part of the reason they did it is to show, because I think in Spider-Man 2 they do it again, but it's when he doesn't have his powers. And I think it's kind of to
just
show
who Peter is.
Right, that one, Peter would do this with or without his powers, and 2, maybe if you were Spider-Man at the time, you could have saved both the people in the second movie. You didn't know they were up there, so chances are you wouldn't have. But I think the movie wants us to think he would have saved them both if he was still Spider-Man. Personally, I'd say he wouldn't, because that person up there was being very quiet. No one was calling for help. He didn't know that there was another person in there
Right.
until they said, "Oh, there was
they
another
didn't
guy
think
on
to
the
be
fourth
like,
floor.
hey, I'm up here.
Help
Oh.
me!" But
Yeah.
I do want to say shout out to David Koepp, who wrote this movie. He also wrote Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible,
Oh,
Wow.
and Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Okay.
Dude has range. He's been writing for a very long time.
Wow.
But yeah, to me, like you said, this movie apparently was the first movie to reach 100 million in its
Yes.
weekend.
Yeah.
single
We talked
weekend?
about that
Yeah.
when we were watching it.
People say different things about which movies started the comic book movie boom. Yeah, X-Men came before this, and so did Blade. But
A lot
as
of
much
people
as-
give Blade the credit. Or
Right.
more people should give Blade the credit. I say all three of them all together. It was a combination. It was a team up, man. It was a team.
yeah, I
thing.
feel like as much as I would love to give Blade the credit because Black Excellence, Blade wasn't as accessible.
No,
It's a
'cause it's
rated R movie about a black dude killing vampires. Like, that's not gonna do what this movie did for comic books and comic book movies. I remember walking out of this movie and I was 9.
Wow.
It was, it was like nothing I had ever seen. I watched cartoons with superheroes on TV, but seeing Spider-Man in live action, it was just amazing to me. And this movie came out after X-Men, but I don't remember X-Men doing that for me. Yeah, I don't know. There was something about this one that I don't know if X-Men just didn't have it or what, which, if we're going chronologically, that movie should get credit because it came out 2000.
Like I said, I think it's a team effort. I think all three
Yeah.
of them did
They
something
all did
for,
their own things.
Yeah, they did something for comic books and comic book movies that made it viable that we now live in the age that we do where there are so many comic book movies coming out.
Right. The fact that it takes 3 hours to get tickets for the new Spider-Man movie.
Ridiculous.
That starts with this. I think depending on the day you ask me, this one could go above Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, it really depends.
It really depends. But
I would
I
like
just-
to take this moment to remind you that Spider-Man 1 has Deliver Me from Evil. Spider-Man 2 does not. Just saying.
okay, yeah, so Aunt May doing her Mermaid Man scream, evil. It's one of those things where, like, this is not supposed to be silly.
No.
But looking back now at the older superhero movies, I see a lot of the silly that I don't think was there when I saw it back then. Colin incessantly makes fun of Uncle Ben's death because
Peter.
Colin is evil.
Yep.
Peter.
Peter.
You can't put it on me and then also do it.
I have to give the audience an example of what we're doing. Watching that death scene next to Colin was not the experience it's supposed to be when you're watching the movie because he had already led up to the marathon by making fun of that scene.
Yeah.
And then now whenever he would say Peter, it's
Peter.
Peter. But
We had such a great time watching
We had
those
so
movies,
much fun.
guys.
See,
yeah.
this is why more people need to watch movies with me because then I started finding variations on Peter Parker,
Oh, it was great.
which was so much fun.
oh right, forgot about that.
Peter Pan Parker, Peter
Pan
Quill
Parker.
Parker. I could just keep
Yeah,
going.
any
It's
kind of
fun.
Peter.
Yeah.
Also, this movie gave us J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson.
Yes.
Oh
And
my god.
That is the gift of all gifts.
He may be consistently the best part in all three movies.
Honestly,
He's just incredible.
he's so good.
Like I don't remember which one it is where he's trying to take his meds and the like
the third
receptionist.
one.
That's
That's my it's one of my favorites.
That might be the best scene in the whole movie.
Yo,
It might be.
honestly, I can't wait to get to that one because Jonah in the third movie
Yeah.
is on a different level. Like he's great in all of these,
Yeah.
but his scenes in the third movie, oh boy, J.K. Simmons is a gift. He's always a win,
so good.
and I'm
So glad that he's going to be in No Way Home.
It's a really good movie. It has the silly moments. Some things are very dated.
I love
Macy Gray's in it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Nothing dates a movie in the early 2000s like Macy Gray.
I love the scene where Peter is trying to use his web slingers.
Mhm.
Which
For the
is
first
just his
time?
wrist
Oh,
for the
right.
first time, and he just names off like all the different
Oh,
catchphrases.
that's
away, Web.
incredible.
Go, Web, go.
Yes.
Doing
Shazam!
all that. Shazam.
Also, fun fact that I told you guys while we were watching the movie, I auditioned to be an extra in the first Spider-Man
You
movie when I was a
did.
kid.
Right.
I auditioned to be one of the kids in the little tram
That
thing.
Nighttime field trip.
They went to like a basketball game or something.
Is that what's going on?
I think that's what was going on.
Okay.
That the Green Goblin attacks at the end. I auditioned to be in that scene with my cousin. It's back when I was trying to be an extra in movies that did not last long.
It would have been so dope to see because one of the great things about these movies is the random extras that now we recognize because they all got famous.
Octavia Spencer's in this movie.
Octavia Spencer
Yeah.
works at the wrestling place, and she's probably one of the most decorated actors or actresses in this movie now, which is hilarious to me. But also that wrestling scene.
That
I don't
Steel
know
Cage
how
was
many
dope.
times it was great. That whole scene is great. I don't know how many times I've said "Bone saw is ready" in my life, but I love it so much. Bruce Campbell right?
Yes.
That's his name?
The announcer?
I love the fact that he's in all 3 of these movies. I love the fact that he's playing a different character in each one. And that each character isn't even like the last character he played.
No.
Someone totally different.
Wait,
Right.
who is he in 2?
In
Yeah.
2, he's the one who doesn't let him into the
Oh, they didn't
The
let
play.
me to the play.
No, I
'Cause
thought
he's
that
late.
was... No,
No,
he's the
3,
waiter.
he's
And
the maitre d'.
we're going to talk
Yes.
about that.
Three's the
But
movie.
yeah, he gives him the name Spider-Man. And
Yeah.
he's so great. It's just so good. That scene is great.
Sarah Ramirez is in this movie. Lucy Lawless is in this movie.
I forgot Xena's in this movie. She's the punk rock chick. Who is Sarah Ramirez?
Sarah Ramirez is currently very well known for Grey's Anatomy.
Oh,
Is that
nice.
Callie?
Yes,
Wait, she's in Spider-Man?
she's in the first one. Yeah, she's
Where-
a cop at a carjacking apparently.
Also, speaking of that carjacker, the guy who falls out the window and murdered Ben
Yeah.
is in Amazing Spider-Man.
What?
Yeah.
He's the driver of not Risa Fons, Irfan Khan.
Yes.
Yeah, he's that guy's driver for some reason.
That's cool.
Yeah, Joe Manganiello is Flash Thompson,
Yeah.
being like 25 or
Joe
26.
Manganiello
Love it.
or
Yeah.
Manganiello. I never remember how to pronounce his last name.
Mango Jello.
That's not how you pronounce his last name.
But yeah, it's great. It's a fun time.
OG Spider-Man.
OG Spider-Man. It gave us
So much.
superhero movies as we know them.
It helped it give us superhero movies as we
Yeah.
know them.
It's just great. Shout out to Willem Dafoe.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
maintain that they could have just painted his face green.
Still would have worked.
It would have worked better.
Yo, that scene where
He's
he's talking
on-
to
When he's
himself
talking
in
himself
the mirror.
that face he makes in the mirror, that's a goblin.
He's on like some Jim Carrey levels of face making.
Right.
Just
Like
like-
the face he makes in the
Yo.
mirror when he's talking to himself is a goblin face.
Put Willem Dafoe and Jim Carrey in a movie.
Just have to make
Ooh.
faces at each other. But yes, this is a movie that stars Mary Jane being a hoe, and I wish it didn't. But
Yeah.
you know, what are you gonna do?
Ah, that kiss is so iconic though.
It is, and apparently Toby couldn't breathe, and Mary Jane was freezing. Like
Oh no.
Yeah. production stuff wasn't great, but it looked great. It's iconic,
And you know what? We still talk about that kiss to this day. Nothing
do.
apparently in any movie matches up
and no one
out of context.
remembers the fact that she was being a tart.
Anyway, number 3, guys. Dallas, what's your number 3?
What is my number 3? My number 3 is Spider-Man: Far From Home.
My number 3 is also Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Hey,
I think our top 3 is the same.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Directed by John Watts. He directed Clown, a horror movie about
What?
a clown. He directed Cop Car. Don't know what that is. And he directed Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Is it a horror movie about a cop car? That's just life.
Right?
Oh my God.
Like a blind spotting. I've seen Clown. It is a lot. But the fact that he made both of these, man, has range. Also, it was written by Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, who wrote the Lego Batman movie, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, and all of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies.
Dope.
So shout out to them.
They've been doing great.
Yeah. Okay. So Far From Home. It's so good. Ironically, there's stuff about this movie that in hindsight kind of bothers me or doesn't work as well. Like I don't really enjoy a lot of the beginning before they're like,
On the trip?
yeah, before they really get things going, because I really liked what Homecoming did for Peter as a high schooler,
Okay.
establishing Ned and Flash and MJ, even though we didn't know her name was MJ until the end, blah, blah, blah. I feel like maybe this one just takes a little too long for me
For it to pick
in
up.
terms of, getting to Spider-Man. It's like,
I
we've
think it's-
established these kids, and I'm not super interested in this trip.
I love the trip. I think it takes so long to get into though because they're dealing with the fallout of Endgame, which unfortunately we now have to deal with in every single movie.
The way they did that was hilarious. Like, the movie starts with I will always
That,
love
like,
you.
montage.
Yes.
When he used it, and the little PowerPoint they made.
Yes.
That's all great.
But
the high
it's-
school stuff still works for me.
But it's the characters having to deal with it emotionally though that we also still have to get through. We have to establish that, and then we can go on the trip finally,
Yeah,
which is where
and
all the stuff happens.
Down for emotion. I think the stuff. Yeah, I'm down for emotion.
I am too.
I think the stuff they do in terms of comic relief, it just feels like they're throwing a lot. Like JB Smoove,
I love JB Smoove.
he's always hit and miss for me. And even that, man, I don't want to disrespect this man. I don't remember his name. I'm gonna look it up. But the white teacher, one who's just sad, and you talk about his wife pretended to blip out on him and everything.
That's
Like,
horrible.
His camera falls in the water, and he just looks sad about it. It's just
That's the type of character you don't like.
exactly
The sad
just
sacks.
a lot of the humor in the beginning of the movie is just okay. Some of this works, some of this doesn't. Get back to Spider-Man.
The actor's name is Martin Starr.
Thank you so much, Martin Starr. I love you. But the movie, it works. It really works.
The movie hits.
Mysterio is great. His performance as the good version of Quentin Beck was
Yes.
so good that I was ready to ignore the fact that I know Mysterio's a villain.
You were like, I know he's the villain, but I want him to be
He
good.
came in and I was thinking, okay, Mysterio's a villain. I'm ready for that. I've always loved Mysterio since the cartoons. I'm ready to see him be bad, but also now I don't want to because you made him so good at being good. They turned Nakia into a love interest. She's a villain in the comics.
That's
so
true.
I thought, who knows what they're going to do? And then when he switches...
It still hits even when you know he's a villain.
Right. I was like, okay, yeah, of course he's bad, but man, that is a switch. Jake Gyllenhaal killed
Also, that scene, man, that is such a good scene. Peter leaving and then the entire joint turning into something completely
just
different.
Falling around him.
It's insane. It's so good. While we're on the discussion of Mysterio, the effects that they use to use his like quote unquote abilities, I guess you could say, like the entire sequence where Peter's trying to find him in that like abandoned building.
I love it so much.
Oh my gosh.
This movie has some of my favorite visuals that I've seen in any comic book movie.
That might be like one of the best Spider-Man visuals. And it has nothing to do with Peter doing like web slinging or anything.
Right.
It just is incredible. And I think it does such a great job of visualizing Peter's emotional state at that point after Endgame. Because this entire movie is about Peter trying to decide, does he want to keep being Spider-Man or does he just want to live his life as Peter Parker and just be a normal kid?
Right.
On top of that, he just had like the most traumatic experience of his life.
He died.
He was gone for 5 years. And then when he came back immediately after, his current mentor died.
Yeah. As soon as he came back.
Like within the half hour that I've been back, my mentor, whose arms I died in, he's now dead.
Right. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
You know, and Peter's going through a lot of pressure and a lot of stress in this movie. Peter consistently in these movies has like parental issues, I guess. He has daddy issues. You know,
Fair.
Dad's dead. Uncle Ben's dead. Uncle Ben being dead leads to Tony Stark becoming a new mentor.
Right.
Tony Stark is now dead, looking for a new mentor. Like, Peter is constantly looking
At
for
some
another
point, buddy,
father.
maybe don't take on mentors. The common denominator is you.
Peter is constantly looking for a father figure. Some way or another, something goes wrong. And in this situation, somebody takes advantage of him looking for a father figure. I just love that.
It's a well-played spin on, his search for a mentor is actually the problem.
Yeah.
The mentor is trying to take you down now.
Because I feel like all of these Spider-Man movies, and I've discussed this already on the podcast before, we had a discussion about Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies. And I feel like all of these movies have been about Peter Parker trying to discover and coming to his own as Spider-Man.
Right.
And what that means to him, not just to everybody else around him.
Yeah.
I think they've been doing a great job with that type of story with Tom Holland's Peter Parker.
Yeah, they have. I think everything they've done with Tom Holland's Peter Parker works, partially due to the fact that, for me, Tom Holland is the best Peter Parker.
Great. Okay, I'm glad we're talking about that. Because to me, Tom Holland is also the best Peter Parker.
Yeah.
He's the best Peter Parker Spider-Man combination, in my opinion.
Before I knew who Deadpool was, Spider-Man was by far my favorite comic book character.
Makes sense.
You know, I grew up watching various different Spider-Man cartoons and all this stuff, watching the Tobey Maguire movies, watching Andrew Garfield movies. Tom Holland is all that. Like, he's everything I need Peter and Spider-Man to be.
He embodies it so perfectly.
Yeah, and he has this charm to him.
But also still an awkwardness.
Right. Like, he checks every box.
Like Peter Parker. Peter Parker should be somebody who is awkward enough that he's a nerd, but also charming enough that literally every girl he meets wants to be in a relationship with him for some weird reason. Literally, Peter Parker gets so many girls, and it doesn't make sense.
It's like the Pete Davidson of comic books. It's just like, I like you. I think you're funny.
My
I see your charm. But man, what is it about? You are pulling some baddies.
Left and right, bro. Like, in the comics alone, it's Betty, Liz, MJ, Gwen, Felicia.
Yeah, like, man.
Dude gets around. So he has to be charming. There has to be something about him that girls like. And speaking of girls liking him, I do really like the chemistry between Tom Holland and Zendaya.
It's fantastic.
I love this version of Peter and MJ, especially because in the first movie, which we'll talk about later, like, he had a different love interest.
Right.
And in this movie, I think they did a great job of kind of like young love crush. Like, I'm really into this girl, but somebody else is also really into her.
And I think that's one thing that the Tom Holland version gets right, more so than a couple others, is that he is trying to orchestrate a way to sit next to her on a trip because he's a high schooler. And Tobey Maguire was thinking, I need to buy a car to impress this woman. Okay, but beside the fact that Tobey is clearly 26, he doesn't feel like a high schooler because he's trying to buy a car to impress a woman.
Which works in the favor of the original trilogy, though, because they don't spend a lot of time in the high school section of Peter Parker's life.
And it's like, they don't feel like high schoolers, despite the fact that, you know, in that movie, he is a high schooler.
For the first half, yeah.
Yeah, this feels like high school stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I really like this girl. I want to sit next to her. I've done that in high school. Like, oh, we're going on a trip. What's next to her on the bus? Because I like her. I was watching Cinema Wins. Shout out to Cinema Wins, one of my favorite YouTube channels. In the one for this movie, he points out the fact toward the end, he gives her, I think it's the flower, the Black Dahlia.
The Black Dahlia that he wants to give her.
Right. He says, I'm sorry it's broken. And she says, I like that it's broken. And the way that Peter says, I really like you, it's so good. At this point, I'm just biting from Cinema Wins, but it's a very good point that he made. He says, a lot of times in these movies, you'd have that quirky, like weird girl.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's, I'm going to put up with your weird quirkiness because I like these other things about you. But for this, it's, this is why I like you. This is who you are, and I like that about you. So Peter gives her this thing, and she's like, I actually like it better, broken. And he's like, man, I really like you. Like, you're so weird, but I love it.
It's
so good.
I also love that this MJ figures it out. She's like, I knew it. I knew you were Spider-Man. And it's so nice that we have a Spider-Man that is allowed to let the people in his life in on his secret.
Right.
Although that might change in the next movie. We'll see what happens. But it's been cool having, Ned knows. Mm-hmm. His aunt now knows in Far From Home, even though she's not in that. I think the one big flaw that I have with Far From Home is that Aunt May doesn't play a big role in it. And I think the Aunt May Peter relationship is such an important relationship to have. But everybody gets to know. MJ gets to know. There's no secrecy. There's secrecy, but there's not secrecy amongst the people that he actually cares about.
Yeah, and I've always hated the aspect of secret identities that, oh, I have to keep my identity a secret to protect the people I love. And it's keeping it a secret from the people you love does not protect them.
It probably puts them in more danger because they don't know what to anticipate.
Right. Tobey Maguire's Aunt May, old ass Aunt May, is saying her prayers, and then Goblin comes
and blows
the back out of her house. What, Colin? That's what he did.
No, continue.
Yeah. Blew the spot up. I don't know how she didn't have a heart attack and die in that moment.
Right.
But the fact that she has no idea that's coming, has no idea that could happen, because Peter doesn't tell her.
Nope.
Like, if you tell her, it's not going to put her in danger. When you run off for no reason, I know why he's running off. I can cover for you.
Like, obviously, don't tell the entire world, but...
Right, like the way that Ned covers for him to the best of his ability. He's not good at it, but, like, he tries.
We're all gonna die!
Exactly, he does stuff like that. Because you have a guy in a chair. You have someone who can help you. Now, if a random goblin attacks me in the streets, like...
I know why.
And maybe I can be on the lookout for that. Maybe I can get some security.
A random goblin.
To Aunt May, that was a random goblin. You don't know Norman like that.
It'll be great to see MJ be involved in the next movie. More so, because she was a little bit involved this time around. She got to be involved in the third act because by that point she knew. And
the way they reveal that she knows is so quick and to the point.
Yes.
It's such an expectation subversion. Even the way Aunt May finds out, she walks in, like,
she
sees him and oh my God. The same way Ned found out, because Peter walks in, he never checks the room that he's in before he reveals himself. He's talking to MJ in mid-sentence, she's like, you're Spider-Man. And none of us expected that. Like, you're Spider-Man. And then she goes into the reasons why it's obvious. It's like, Peter, really? Washington? You always disappear for no reason? Like, you're clearly Spider-Man.
She's like, I'm seeing the signs. I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
Which I also love about MJ. She's not dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Zendaya's MJ is incredibly intelligent.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that the Tom Holland movies have is that characters put things together. But yeah, great movie. Mysterio's fantastic. Oh, the Spider-Sense scene. I have to talk about that. That scene at the end.
Oh, no. With the gun?
Before that. But that's also like a great way to, I guess, like bookend that. But the scene where he closes his eyes says, come on, Peter Tingle.
Yes.
The way that everything is dark and silent until he dismantles that first drone and then the gunfire comes in.
Yep.
Is cinema. It's so good. People have been complaining about Tom Holland and does he have spider sense? Why doesn't he use spider sense? Blah, 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 blah. And the way that this movie focuses on that is so great. But that scene, visually fantastic. In terms of showing how impressive Spider-Man can be with his powers, fantastic. Like you said, at the end, when Beck is going to shoot him and he has a spider sense to the point that this dude's invisible, but he still grabs the gun. It's so dope.
So good. It's so good. And then also, I remember when we came out of that theater, and you guys can check out our review for it, but like back then we weren't allowed to talk about the end credit scene.
Right.
That scene where his identity is revealed, oh man.
I'm
so hyped in the theater.
I'm never going to understand why that's a credit scene. And I know if you're Marvel at this point, you know people are going to stay for your credit scene. So you know people are going to see it. But you shouldn't put something in the credit scene that is so integral to the story you just told. And this still works on both sides. This is going forward, you're going to need to know this.
Yeah.
Like that's how they use a lot of their credit scenes. But that's just the end of this movie. Like, why wasn't that before the credits?
Usually their post-credit scenes are like, here's a tease as to what's coming up next. Like the end of the Black Widow movie, it's Yelena's going to go after Hawkeye. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
That's not necessarily need-to-know information. You could just go watch the Hawkeye series and be like, oh, snap, Yelena's here, and that would be fine.
Right, but seeing it is like, oh, okay, cool. So now when I see her, I'm going to know what's happening.
Yeah.
But this is just the end of this story. Like, why wait?
It is legitimately the end of the story.
Yeah, like, that's how this movie ends.
Luckily, it's a mid-credit scene.
Right, you have to get all the way to the end. But when J.K. Simmons popped up on that screen,
so good.
I told this in the original episode we did on it. The first time I watched it, I couldn't hear what he was saying because the audience applause was so loud. It drowned out the scene. Like, he popped on screen and everyone, myself included, us all started cheering. Like, oh my God, it's J.K. Simmons.
It's going to be crazy watching No Way Home because, first off, my theater is packed.
Oh, of course.
I'm so excited for the audience. It feels like it's been so long since I've had a good full theater audience reaction to something, and I feel like this might be the one. This might be it.
Yeah, definitely. People are ready. That's Far From Home. It's great.
It's so good.
I love it. Was that
number 3?
My number 3?
It was both of our number 3. Colin, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is, this is appropriate, Spider-Man 3.
Cool. We were just talking about J.K. Simmons.
Interesting. I was wondering where that was going to fall on your list.
I fucking love this movie. It's so good. Everything about it is it just keeps getting better. I love this movie. It's so stupid, and
Which is so
love it.
Funny because me and Dallas do not love this movie.
It's cinema. This is cinema. You want to talk about whatever the fuck you're talking about? No, this is cinema. Taking your girlfriend to a jazz club only to then just jump on stage out of fucking nowhere, start playing the piano, and then do this whole dance and song number for your ex with your girlfriend with you the whole time. Then I think that's the same scene in which he backhands said ex.
Yes.
Like, this movie is so good.
Shout out to Gwen Stacy for being woman enough to be like, I didn't know this was happening. I'm sorry. I'm leaving.
Yeah,
right.
that is
that was over her.
Fantastic moment. Just being like, I'm sorry.
Bryce Dallas Howard is fantastic.
I love Bryce Dallas
Howard. She
Howard.
has a great name. She is.
And she comes from a great family.
So pretty. Gwen Stacy is distractingly pretty in this movie. It's funny because Colin and I are so different. When I rewatched this movie, it's a movie that I saw a while ago and thought, don't like that. That's bad. I don't want to do it anymore. And I was rewatching it, and a lot of this movie works really well.
It was so funny because me and you we were sitting next to each other while we did the rewatch, and like me and you would be like, this scene is really great, and then immediately after a scene that was not really great would happen, we'd be like, ah yes, this is. And
it's funny because the things that make this movie not good for me are the reasons Colin loves it. Like he immediately went into one of my least favorite things about this movie. It's funny, a lot of times people, if they don't like a movie, they'll say like, there's a good movie in there somewhere.
There is a good movie in there somewhere.
There are a couple good movies in here somewhere. Like Sandman is great.
Fantastic.
The scene where he becomes Sandman is still one of the best Spider-Man scenes.
So good.
I think they said it took them 9 months to make that scene or something like that.
And it shows.
It was worth it. Like it.
Fantastic. The scene of him fighting him underground with the black suit is really good. The way it shows Peter's anger and the way the suit is affecting him. The stuff with Harry, I really like the memory loss, how he becomes just this goofy, friendly guy.
Wholesome Harry is like my favorite thing
He's so
ever.
good.
And then, it becomes bad again, but he goes like full bad to the point that some of it works, some of it doesn't for me. And then his redemption arc toward the end, I really like. That's 2 separate good stories in this movie for me.
And then there's the Venom storyline.
Oh my God. If I didn't love the character Venom so much, I might not have the disdain for this movie that I have. Because my biggest issue is how much they missed the mark with Venom. Even if they got it right, that's not a character that you should just shove into the the last third of the movie like that. He's Venom. He's one of Spider-Man's biggest villains. He needs his own time. He needs his own story. For me, it's kind of like the way Dark Knight gets Two-Face right. It's very good. But Two-Face doesn't get enough from me. Because Two-Face is one of my favorite villains. But Venom didn't get enough, and you just did it so wrong. But we're here to talk about the stuff that works.
Colin, what else do you love about this movie?
See, that's the thing is, the stuff that works for me, again,
does not work for us.
Honestly, one of my favorite scenes is the restaurant. It's just awful the whole time.
The restaurant.
When he takes
Gwen?
No, when he takes MJ to the restaurant and he's going to propose, and that just falls up. I love that scene.
But shout out to Bruce Campbell.
He
makes that scene.
Completely makes that scene.
The way every time he's going to send the
he calls them in and then angrily
to the table and then claps it. Get away. Bruce Campbell's great.
That scene just hurts me so much because Gwen puts her hand on Peter's shoulder, and I'm like, Peter, get her hand off of your shoulder. How are you not understanding how
that's the
wrong
problem.
this is? That your girlfriend today just saw you kiss this other woman.
Right. This specific
That-
woman.
This specific
Oh
woman
my god, that kiss is one of the stupidest decisions I think anyone has ever made.
in a movie
It's
ever
so-
in life.
It's just like
Why?
you know that MJ's there.
You told her where you were coming out from so she could see
Right.
you.
You told her to watch.
Literally, there's no way she's not going to see this. Even if she weren't there in person, she'd see it all over the news. There's no way she wasn't going to see
Right, it
this.
was in the
What were you
newspaper.
thinking?
And for some reason, in my memory of the reasons I didn't like this movie,
Mhm.
I thought that Gwen initiated it.
She did
And
not.
Peter was saying,
No.
okay, fine. She wasn't going to do it. He told her to.
Right.
It's so
Well, it's
stupid.
like the crowd goes kiss him, and then she's like,
yeah. She's like, oh, no. And then he says, go ahead, lay one on me. And it's like, bro,
But-
you had an out.
And you have a
didn't need to
girlfriend.
do that.
Even if Gwen was the one who initiated,
It
she
doesn't
don't
matter.
know this man has a girlfriend.
Right.
Right. And that wasn't an issue I had with Gwen. If she did initiate it, it was still Peter should have said no. But the fact
Yeah.
that she was not going to do it and he told her to, just come
I
on,
just-
Peter.
I remember my first time watching this movie, and I remember that was the scene where I started to dislike the movie. Because I was like, how stupid can
Like,
you
don't
be?
make me dislike Peter Parker.
Speaking of Gwen, this movie introduces her as a sexy model for a photocopier.
Yes, I think she's like on top of a
For
printer
a
or something.
what? Is
For
that
a-
what she for a photocopy? Is that what it was?
It's a printer or a photocopy.
I
I
don't know
remember her
what-
being a model.
Yeah, I don't know what they're
But she's
advertising,
modeling,
but she's
like,
on like a
office
copy machine or something.
machinery, and it's just
I
like
don't.
All right, Gwen.
I don't know.
God, this movie just slaps. It,
I love her relationship with friggin' Eddie Brock because he's like, oh yeah, I'm dating your daughter, and Gwen's like, I went out with you once. Yeah, we're not dating. I'm not interested. Like it's just so.
I want to talk about Eddie Brock because I want to talk about Topher Grace. I love Topher Grace, and Topher Grace is good in this movie, playing whatever character this is. This is not Eddie Brock. He's good the way that if you told me that Jesse Eisenberg is not playing Lex Luthor in Batman v Superman,
You'd be like, this is good.
I'm like, yo, he's killing it. And
Okay.
he is. Performance-wise, he's doing his thing. But that's not Lex Luthor.
I have
This is not Eddie Brock.
a question for you,
What's up?
not to me.
Okay.
Is Tom Hardy Eddie Brock?
I wouldn't have an answer for you anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, I figured that's why the question was for me.
Well, also because she just doesn't appreciate cinema.
Tom Hardy, yes. Even beyond this being a misrepresentation of the character for me, he goes to church and says, God, please kill Peter Parker.
Yeah, that's
That is
not.
the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
I mean, I'm not religious, but I don't think that's how it works.
That's not how it works.
Everyone knows that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. That's not how
Like,
any
God,
of this
please-
works.
Topher Eddie, have you been to church? have you ever prayed before? I get,
But
you
also-
think I pray for things I want, but that's not how this works.
I don't think
What's
you use
crazy
God
is-
to put a hit out on something.
Right.
What's crazy is he does it after he loses his job, which he rightfully loses because
Right.
he stole Peter Parker's work.
Yeah, he just
and used it for something
badly,
else.
manipulated a photo and called it his. Like that's
Yeah,
messed
and
up.
like
And you-
committed libel.
Yeah,
A
and you
major
ruined
publication.
your publication's like reputation because they
Mhm.
had to print a retraction
Right,
because you took a photo and said this is what's happening.
right.
No, you rightfully lost your job.
Are a bad person.
You're awful. I've never read any Venom comics, but I would hope that Eddie Brock would not be that guy.
No, Eddie is.
A good journalist from what I've seen.
Yeah, and it's funny because this is kind of like they're on a path to Eddie's origin story. Eddie does become a disgraced journalist because he accuses someone incorrectly, but he thinks the person did
it.
the thing. Like he didn't lie.
To the
There
best
was a
of his
criminal-
knowledge,
right,
he told the
And
truth.
he reported a story about this guy being a criminal. I think his name was Sin Eater or something silly like that.
What?
Yeah. And then
You eat somebody's sin? Interesting.
and then Spider-Man caught the real guy.
Okay.
And then Eddie, lost his reputation and everything. So he was mad at Spider-Man. It wasn't Spider-Man's fault. You should have did your job better. But he had that vengeance in him. That made the symbiote latch on to him because the symbiote was mad at Spider-Man because Spider-Man dumped it.
This is not a good translation of that anger because no, you rightfully lost your job.
Right. And Eddie Brock should be a large man, but that's neither here nor there.
Colin,
Me.
what else you like about this movie, man? We're trying to understand
It's
I
just.
don't. Okay, I understand.
some of it.
I understand all of the reasons Colin likes. I disagree with a lot of
Here's
them.
part of it for me. I don't have any attachment to Spider-Man.
Right.
So nothing in this movie is a misrepresentation of anything I like. So I'm just along for the ride, and I'm having a blast.
To be fair, the first time I saw this movie, I also had no attachment to Spider-Man. I just was upset at the scene of him kissing another woman.
Oh, it's bad. I mean, he shouldn't have done
Right.
that.
That's something that you can be upset about regardless.
But it's just like, this movie is just buck wild all the time. Peter is just like on an emotional hair trigger.
Oh, God.
I think this is the movie where he's talking to I think MJ on the phone, and Ditkovich's daughter made him cookies. He's like, yeah, go make me more cookies. Like,
he's talking to Connor.
He's
Because Connor's telling him about the symbiote.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. He's like cartoonishly bad, and I love it.
I hate it.
Yeah, right. I hate it.
But yeah, it's one of those situations where when you don't have attachment to the thing that's being adapted, it's the most liberating thing in the world to go in to watch a movie and know nothing about the adaptation.
Yeah.
Know nothing about the source material. Like, I can go into Guardians of the Galaxy, and if they got it completely wrong, I don't care.
I would never know.
Great. And as far as I know, they didn't get it completely wrong, because that girl we used to know, who used to be on our podcast, she's a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan. And she said that, for the most part, they got it right.
We still know her. She's still a member of the podcast. She's just very busy.
Supposedly, she's going to be in our next episode.
No, she's
we'll
just
find
somebody
out.
that we used to know. But the thing that works the best in this movie is J.K. Simmons.
Woo!
The scene where he's trying to take the medicine.
Oh,
Shout out to Elizabeth Banks.
God.
Because she's a fantastic Betty. And when she's hitting that button to make his not that one. Not that one. This one? Yes.
I like how he just like gets scared. He's like shakily pointing like is it this one?
No, that one. No, that one. Also,
he and
Betty
Betty
some
could
of
be
his
their own
best
movie.
lines in this movie. When he says, like, you want a job, doesn't anyone care what I want? And Lackey Dude comes in and says, I do. The way that JK says, shut up, get out, is my favorite thing in this movie.
You want a staff job and you want a staff job. Anybody care about what I want?
I do.
Shut up, get out.
He doesn't even look at him. He's still looking off screen. He's so good. And during Peter's, I guess let's call it douchening, when he's sitting there.
You heard him. He said it.
Yeah, wish he hadn't.
He's becoming a douche. What do you want me to? I don't know how to.
You're
my English guy. How would you?
Well, no.
Douche awakening?
The problem is that if you wanted a verb for that, it would be douching, but we all know what that actually is, so I don't like it any way you slice it. It's
That's
just
fair.
not good.
Dickening?
No.
Okay, so he's becoming. Look.
Continue.
Yeah. The scene when Peter has his feet up on Jonah's desk, the way that Jonah is just looking at him and then down at his feet, and back up at him, and then down at his feet. J.K. Simmons is the best thing about this movie. He's so good. I'm trying to be positive.
We can move on from the masterpiece of cinema.
I just want to say that I think that this movie suffers more so than even The Amazing Spider-Man 2. We were talking about how there's just too much going on in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
This is the blueprint for you're doing too much.
Yep.
Yes.
This is the blueprint.
Which is so funny because everyone goes back and says, oh, they did way too much in this movie. And then Spider-Man 2, they thought, why not do that again? But that movie still works for me better than this for plenty of reasons.
We'll see if they fall into the same trap with No Way Home.
I mean, they have a lot of villains.
They do, but so does Into the Spider-Verse. So
True.
There is a way to do it.
Oh, definitely.
There is a way to do it, and we'll see if they succeed.
The issue is importance. Into the Spider-Verse has a lot of villains, but a bunch of them, like the Scorpion and the gray dude whose name I don't know, like you can tell that they're not meant to be major characters right now. Maybe they will be later.
Yeah, but they also all had the same goal, which helps to streamline your story.
Well, yeah, when you have them working for someone, it really works well.
The great dude's name is Tombstone, by the way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, number 2, because we did my number 3.
Right, because you had the same one.
Is that where you are? Okay, cool. Number 2, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Great, so is mine. So
It's so good. All right, so, John Watts, again, was written by 3 writing duos. Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley. John Watts and Christopher Ford and Chris McKenna and Eric Summers. I'm not going to go through all their stuff because there's 6 of them. Okay, so it might sound weird, but within the first few minutes of this movie, I knew it was going to be my favorite Spider-Man movie. The way the old theme comes in over the Marvel Studios logo. I was like, okay, you got me. Like, at this point, you have to work for me not to like this movie.
Winning.
Right, and then
Peter
we get doing his
footage,
little home video.
Of Civil War.
Even before that, when he's in the car with Happy, Queens, it's a rough borough, but hey, it's home. I copied that for a school project I did in college because it was so good. Like, there was a little video we had to do about ourselves, and I started with, Pasadena, it's a rough city, but hey, it's home. Because I love that so much. Oh, I love this movie.
And I think the reason why these movies for me are above the Sam Raimi movies is the tone of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the tone of it so much. We were talking about Tom Holland earlier. I just think he captures high school Peter so well.
He really does.
And I think this movie in particular really captures high school Peter Parker, because he really does have to balance and juggle being Spider-Man and being a normal teenager. Like, he goes to Liz's party hoping to impress Liz or whatever by being Spider-Man. And in the midst of changing into his Spider-Man uniform, something actually happens. So he actually has to go be a superhero. And it's just like, they do such a great job of just perfectly balancing. Peter's doing a normal teenage thing. Oh, wait, he has to go be Spider-Man real quick. And I think that's why it's also above Far From Home for me, is because it just better balanced that teenage lifestyle.
Yeah.
And just did it so perfectly.
And this is the movie that makes him the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in a way that Far From Home can't, because he's in Europe.
Yeah, he's at home.
But
although I do like Far From Home because it does put Peter in a different environment. Although I would like to see more of this current Peter in the environment that we know him so well for.
Right. And I think going into this movie and seeing him do stuff like give an old lady directions.
Do a flip.
Right. That, like, interact with people in the street, return a stolen bike. This is friendly neighborhood stuff.
Eating a churro on like a fire escape.
He's so charming through all of it. Like the thing you said, do a flip, like that whole interaction. Call me Spider-Man. Okay, Spider-Man. It's so much fun. And it's pure and it's endearing.
That entire montage, just like, and it happens so, it's like you said, like it happened so early on in the movie that like you just know, like you're like, yeah, this is what I want. This is what I want out of Spider-Man. This is why Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man, because I just think his movies capture something that the other two series didn't.
Right.
And that's not to any fault of their own. They were seeking to capture something completely different.
Yeah, they got what they were going for.
We did the rewatch of the Sam Raimi movies, and we did the rewatch of The Amazing Spider-Man, the Mark Webb ones. And like those two were already two very different tones. They were going after two very different vibes that you can get out of Spider-Man. Yeah. And then this one, in and of itself, is also a very different vibe and takes place in a universe that's, you know, it already has foundation. I remember when we first saw this movie, one of the things that we loved about it was the way that Peter references the outside world that we've already seen in the MCU, because he's a teenager.
Right.
Those things would be like pop culture to him. And it's so very interesting the way that they like intertwine these things. Somebody makes a comment about Black Widow being hot or something. I don't remember.
I got a hot day with Black Widow coming up. Yeah.
Yes.
And the kids are playing like, what is F, Marry, Kill? What'd you say? Cap, Thor, and Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man. Yeah.
Like, these are conversations that kids would be having if they went to school in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
So it feels real. It feels grounded. That's one of the things that I want to address, because depending on the day that you ask me, I'm either a little peeved with how closely tied this Peter is to Iron Man, or very glad about it, because the Marvel Universe is so interconnected. Half these superheroes live in New York specifically.
Sure.
They're going to interact and they're going to have their stories intertwined. And we spent so long not being able to see Spider-Man in movies interact with other Marvel heroes because of rights.
Yeah.
Growing up watching Spider-Man cartoons, he always interacted with other heroes.
I mean, one of his first comic books is him interacting with the Fantastic Four. That's within the first 5 issues, I want to say.
Right.
Of Spider-Man's existence.
Yeah. So him being tied to other heroes makes sense. It makes a lot more sense than when you have a movie introduce a new character in their origin story. It takes place in New York somehow, and we see no other Marvel heroes. Like, where are they?
Where's Spidey? Where you at?
Right. You're not swinging around?
Are you guys on different parts of New York? You guys very far apart? Okay.
Okay, got it. But cool. I love that. There's so much about this movie to love. Tom Holland's great.
Oh, Michael Keaton. We haven't even gotten into Michael Keaton.
Keaton is great. Freaking Aunt May doesn't look like she's on death's door, which is so enjoyable.
It's nice to know that Peter's going to have Aunt May for a while.
Right.
At a normal aunt age. I understand in the comics she's very old.
It
just doesn't make sense to me.
I've always hated that, because it's like, yo, how old are your aunt and uncle? You're in high school, and they
are grandparent age.
They're going to die of natural causes by the time you graduate. But Marissa Tomei is younger. She's so fine.
One of my favorite things about the movie is the montage of her helping him get ready for homecoming.
Yeah.
Such a good moment.
Yeah. We have great Aunt May moments. They're not all just about imparting wisdom.
Although the one scene where he comes home crying because Tony takes
they have
his
that
suit.
too.
Oh, so good.
But it's like also like you'll be just to see regular aunt stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't all have to be
Spider-Man related.
Right.
Even though she doesn't know it's Spider-Man related.
Yeah. She's great. Michael freaking Keaton.
Oh my gosh.
They took the Vulture. They took one of Spider-Man's lamest villains and made him so dope. 90% of that is because of Michael Keaton's performance and just how great he is.
My favorite scene that always comes to mind, it's the stoplight scene, man.
It's so good.
It's such good directing. And they're at the stoplight, it's at a red light, and he realizes that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and the light goes green, and it's just like, oh, this is so good.
Oh, Spider-Man. Like, bet you're happy your pal Spider-Man was there. It's funny because, as he should, Michael Keaton gets all the credit for that scene. But Tom Holland is doing his thing in that back seat.
Yep.
Even, what's her name, Laura Harrier?
Yep, Laura Harrier, a.k.a. my celebrity twin, apparently.
The way that she is a typical teenager, she's on the phone. She's not really paying attention to the way this conversation is going.
No,
because if she was, she would pick up on it too.
Oh, yeah.
But she's on the phone and she's like, oh, no, like you're at my party, but then you disappeared. And then Vulture's like, huh. And the way Peter looks at her, there's a couple of different looks that he does. Like, he looks terrified. He looks at her phone. He's like, oh, and then he immediately goes back to terrified. And then there's a side eye he gives her. Like, shut up. Stop talking.
Stop snitching
but he can't
on me.
say anything. And it's so good.
Also, the twist of him being Liz Allen's father
came out of nowhere.
Such a good twist.
We had happy music playing. Okay, cool. The dance scene is coming. And then he opens the door and the music just stops dead. And everyone in the audience is so good.
Also, for the record, to everybody who was wondering why we said Laura Harrier is apparently my celebrity twin, after this movie came out, all of my friends said that she looked like me, mostly because she was rocking the same plaid that I was wearing.
It was she was dressed like you, which is like, all right.
Although I guess we have similar facial features in certain ways, but like, it was the plaid.
Also, shout out to Garcelle. I've never known how to say her last
Beauvais,
name.
I believe.
Beauvais.
It was nice seeing her as Jamie Foxx show fans.
I was so happy to see her. It's funny. I kind of want her back for the next one because Jamie Foxx is in
Yeah,
it.
he's in the next one.
But like her as Liz's mom, Vulture's wife, and the fact that Liz is black and Vulture is white, it's even more
such a good
shocking.
twist.
Like, oh, okay, this dude is her dad. Also, he has a black daughter. Cool.
Oh, one of the things I remember we talked about when the movie first came out was like the fact that Liz Allen is kind of the beginning of the story because Vulture, shows the picture
that she drew.
The first thing that we see is the picture that's drawn, and he's like, "Hey, my daughter drew this."
Yeah.
And Liz just kind of becomes like a thread throughout this entire movie, without even needing to have a lot of screen time. She just is the thread, which is so cool.
This movie, there's so much to love about it.
Yeah.
Donald Glover's in this movie. And he has, let's say...
No, you come fix this. Come back and fix this.
He has like 2 scenes, and he has like a minute and a half of screen time between them. But every line hits. The way he's just this laid-back, probably stoned version of Aaron Davis when he's trying to buy a gun, and he's like, I just want to stick up somebody, man. I'm not trying to shoot them back in time.
Yeah.
And yeah, the scene where he's talking to Peter, no, come fix this. Like,
and also, I got a nephew out here. Like,
oh, when he said I got a nephew that live here, I almost backflipped in the theater. But that whole interaction is so good. Like, he respects Spider-Man. He's like, okay, it was pretty ballsy the way that you said, if you're going to shoot somebody, shoot me. But also, what happened to your voice? Because Peter has this goofy little voice. Hey. He says, I heard you before. I know what a girl sounds like. I'm not a girl. I'm a man.
Oh my goodness. There's just so much. There's so much about this movie that I just adore. I just think it's such
freaking Suit Lady.
Yes, Suit Lady.
Suit Lady. I didn't know that I loved Jennifer Connelly's voice so much until I heard it disembodied in a Spider-Man movie, which sounds weird. But as soon as Suit Lady came on, I was like, okay, who's this? It's like her, but Spider-Man.
It's really funny to me just because I know her as Sarah from Labyrinth. So, like, that's automatically.
Oh, right.
It's not fair. That's what I know Jennifer Connelly for. But she's great as Suit Lady.
She's the fantastic Suit Lady, a.k.a. Karen.
And I do love the relationship that Peter has with Tony in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, Peter is the main part of the story. It's about him wanting to be Spider-Man and being the best Spider-Man that he can be, and maybe going a little too far to do that. But I also like that Tony doesn't just feel like a stagnant character. He does feel like somebody who has learned over the MCU period at this point. So when he chastises Peter and he goes, if you can't be without the suit, you don't deserve to have it.
Right.
That's what Tony basically learns in Iron Man 3.
Right.
So it's like so cool to see like these lessons that Tony has learned. Okay, I'm passing it on to the next generation of hero. Mm-hmm. This is how this works. If you want to be a hero, this is what it takes. Peter learns that lesson. And I think that that's such a cool way to use Tony Stark.
Yeah.
in general, just going forward in the MCU, if you don't want to use like our OG Avengers as heroes, you can use them as mentors in that fashion.
Right.
And I think that's great. You know, that's what I would have wanted Nat to do. That's what I would have wanted Tony to do if Tony was still alive. It's for them not necessarily to continue being heroes, but to be mentors to the next heroes that we get coming up.
Yeah.
As much as people, you know, complain about Tony's inclusion into these Spider-Man movies, I think I just appreciate that his inclusion is used in a way to help Peter along, not to stifle him, not to take over his film, but to push him forward as a character. And I think that's really important.
And there's so many things that work with Tony's characterization and his appearance in this movie. He doesn't have a whole lot of screen time.
No, he doesn't.
But all of it really works. Like the fact that the first time he appears, he's in a suit, but he's not there.
Yes.
And one other thing that Cinema Wins pointed out is when the bot is first talking to him, it's mimicking Tony's movements. And you can see that Tony is trying to get away his attention because the robot lifts its hand like that. And then later, Peter thinks he just sent another drone.
I love that. That interaction is
he says,
so
if you really
good.
cared, you'd actually be here. And he comes out of that suit,
Real
stunting
quick.
with that black suit on and the way he's walking toward him. And one of the funniest things.
I love the switch up that Peter has because Peter's all big and bad.
Right, when
and
he's
then
not
when
there.
Tony steps out of the suit,
He's like,
oh my
he
God.
backs away. And like I've seen, I can't remember what it was. It was an interview where Peter was talking, Tom Holland was talking about the first time he saw Robert Downey Jr. on set. And he was like, oh my God, it's Robert Downey Jr. And somebody edited this scene with that reaction. When Tony pops out of the suit,
I think I've seen
Tom
that.
goes, oh my God, it's Robert Downey Jr. But it works so well. You see how much Tony cares for Peter because he takes away the suit because he thinks something's going to happen to him.
Yep.
He says, if something happened to these people, that'd be on you. And if something happens to you, I feel like that's on me. The look on his face is that of a father figure who doesn't want to punish his kid. The like, this hurts me more than that hurts you. Because when he says, all right, it's not working out, give me the suit, you can see the pain in his face. Like,
He's
I really
disappointed
wanted this to
too.
work. Yeah, I don't want to do this, but I can't be stressing about this 15-year-old kid getting himself killed out here.
I got a life to live.
The fact that it feels like Tony's kind of dismissive and brushing him off, but then by the end, we realize he's aware of everything that's going on. He's talking about the lady with the churro that Peter left a voicemail about. Like, he knows everything. He knows that Peter quit the band a month ago when Peter lies and said he's at band correct. It's like, he's so great.
He's really pulling dad moves out here.
Right, and the way they sprinkled him into this movie, like that boat scene. I also love the action of that scene. Peter trying
very
to
good.
put everything together and do like his version of the train pose when he's pulling it back.
But also like the HUD display.
Yeah,
And
you see
like,
all the
1,
spots.
2, you have to hit all the spots, and then he misses one and just
Right, and Karen being a software sees, 98% successful, and it's like, great job, Peter, you're 98%. And he's like, wait, what? And like the way he shouts no when he jumps, you can hear the fear, like, no, please, no.
I remember that no hit so hard.
It does. No. And then the way that Iron Man, you can see the anger even though you can't see Tony's face. The way he lifts up, oh, hi, Spider-Man. Like, it's so good. Down to the extra, like the big black dude who's like, yeah, Spider-Man. And then he's like, yeah, Iron Man. It all works so well.
Okay, there's one last thing we should discuss before we move on.
What's that?
The best scene. Probably the best Peter Parker scene ever, in my opinion.
Which one?
Come on, Spider-Man. Come on, Spider-Man.
That's a
Him
great scene.
under that rubble and just crying out for help.
Yeah.
Just that recognition that Peter Parker may be Spider-Man, but he is also a child.
Yeah.
And he gets scared and he gets into situations that might be too big for him and that sometimes he just needs help.
Yeah.
But in this situation, it's like Tony said, sometimes you just have to be able to do things on your own. Peter realizes nobody's going to be able to come help him. He has to do this on his own. And he just like gathers up that last bit of courage and manages to lift all that rubble off of him. But man, like the panic that you hear in his voice. Hey, please. I'm down here. I'm stuck. Oh, it's so good.
And I'm always a sucker for pulling shots right out of the comics and putting them on live action. It's so good. And that's definitely one of them.
Such a good scene. That is probably my favorite Peter Parker scene in any movie that has Peter Parker in it.
I have way too many to try to narrow it down, but that's definitely up there. It's a great one.
I think that's my favorite, like, Peter Parker-centric scene. It's so good. And also, Tom Holland's just really good at doing all the emotional stuff.
He's so good.
He's so fantastic.
Also, last thing I'm going to say, it's a very minor thing. When he's talking to the dude who runs the bodega, and he asks him in Spanish, how's your daughter?
Yeah. We didn't even talk about MJ, but MJ's also a very small part of this movie.
Yeah,
but
and we talked about her in the
Yeah, but I do want to mention that one of the things that I liked about MJ in this movie, even though she's not in it much, I like every moment with her. Like the establishment of her personality in this movie. She's
so odd.
She's so odd, but she's so cool. And just like, I love when they're at the Washington Monument and she's like, I don't want to go in there. Like, I'm a conscientious objector of going into the Washington Monument. Like, I love that type of stuff. And then at the end, we get the, you can call me MJ. Her flipping him off at the dance. Hilarious.
It was so weird to me. Like, why did you do that? But also, it was hilarious.
Because high schoolers.
High schoolers are weird.
Just high schoolers. Because at that point, they're not like best friends or anything like that. But I think she would consider him her friend. They're on like the decathlon team together, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to say with her.
I mean, she clearly considers him a friend because she says at the end of the movie, you can call me MJ. My friends call me MJ. So.
Yeah, by that point, they're friends.
Colin, what is your number 2?
Oh boy. Amazing Spider-Man.
Yes, I figured by process of elimination that would have to be it.
Andrew Garfield just slaps. He's so good. And he and Emma Stone together are so good. And this movie doesn't have the problem of the second one where it's doing too much.
That's true.
This movie, it does some things that are a little... He can control lizards. He can summon lizards to him. How's that? I don't understand that. What is that? But I'm down. I don't understand it, but I'm down.
I didn't see this in theaters, but I saw it after it was in theaters and watching it for the first time and just being like, I really like this version of Spider-Man. Because he was nerdy, but he was nerdy in a very different way than Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was nerdy. Because this movie came out 2012, so shortly after I got out of high school.
Right.
So for me, I was like, yeah, I wasn't cool in high school. I was a bit of a nerd, but like, I'm not a Tobey Maguire type of nerd.
Right.
I was more of the Andrew Garfield type of nerd, where like, you're just not maybe into the things that all the popular kids would be into. He's obviously very book smart because he's second in his class. But like, he doesn't show it off. That's not like a thing that he does. He just happens to also be incredibly intelligent. He just seems like he's into very alternative things. I liked that take on Peter Parker. It was very different, but it's still aligned with, he's still a nerd.
Yeah, and it's nuanced in the way that a movie that came out in 2002 wouldn't be. Like, this movie came out a decade after Tobey Maguire's first Spider-Man movie. And when we meet him, he's walking on a school bus full of 30-year-olds. And they're all talking to him like, oh, you can't sit next to me. I'm not cool, but I'm cooler than you. Get away from me. And then somebody trips him. They're doing the whole thing. The bus driver won't stop for him.
Until MJ tells him to.
Right. Just the level of, they're really piling it on. There's no subtlety to it. And this one, the first thing we see is Flash throws a basketball at him. Other than that, there aren't really a lot of indications that he's disliked. Because like you said, you might not be the coolest person, but people aren't just going to be attacking you. Like, you're not going to get thrown in a locker for existing. And the only reason that Flash beats him up is because he says his name. He calls him Eugene, which...
Flash doesn't like that name, clearly.
I wouldn't either. But yeah, he calls him Eugene in a great scene. It's a wonderful, like, save the cat in this case, save the nerd scene. He basically takes Flash's wrath away from the kid that he's
Which I think
up.
is great. It's a great indicator of how great of a Spider-Man Peter Parker will make.
Right.
Because
he knows he wouldn't win that fight.
Yeah.
But he's like, yo, come on, man. Like, stop. Put him
he
down.
jumps into the fray even though he knows that there's no way he's going to win. He just does the right thing because he's a good guy. And that's Peter Parker.
Yeah. Even the line delivery. Put him down, Eugene. I love it so much.
I like their way of introducing the fact that Peter likes photography.
Yeah.
I used to bring my camera to school.
Yes, you did.
Every day, my senior year of high school.
Yes, you did.
So seeing like Peter, he carries his camera around because that's what we do apparently. Like,
because y'all some fucking nerds.
I like it and I don't. Peter's a little too creepy for me. There's a lot of voyeuristic stuff going on with him and Emma Stone that I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
I think there's only one voyeuristic thing that I have an issue with, and that's that her picture was up on his desktop. That's the only that's the only thing I don't like. Otherwise, I'm like, photographers just take pictures of things all the time.
Wait, is it in the first one or the second one where he stalks her?
Second one.
Is that the second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's after they're broken up, and she's just like, you've been following me
right,
around.
Right.
Yeah, he's a little creepy, but Andrew Garfield,
that was
his
in
charm
back then.
offsets the creepiness.
Remember, Twilight was out during that time too.
Oh man,
that was the end thing apparently. Stalking.
I will say,
please don't do that.
I like this movie a lot, and I know we're trying to stay positive, but the way he becomes Spider-Man with spiders just raining down on him, we did not need that.
Oh, that hurt.
Hate that.
No, what I didn't need was the web coming out of the injury.
Hated that too.
Oh my god, when he's like slowly pulling it out. Yeah.
The
and
body
he goes
horror.
on Bing and just looks up a bunch of pictures of spider bites.
Yeah, what the?
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Like everything from the spiders falling down on him to like maybe the next 20 minutes of the movie, I don't enjoy. Like when I walked out of this movie the first time I saw it, I was thinking, I didn't really like that. But over time, it grew on me a little bit to the point where it's funny. This one and the second one are kind of like Spider-Man 1 and 2 in that I like the second one's better, but not by a whole lot.
Really? I like
Yeah.
the first one here better. I think
Most
it's probably
people
because it's
do.
more streamlined.
I feel like where the quantity of the villains was a problem for the second one, I liked the quality of villains better. Because
Yeah.
Lizard is not interesting. Connors is kind of interesting. But even then, he's not that interesting.
He's not.
And Lizard is just, I'm going to make everybody lizards. I'm a lizard and lizards
Well,
are
it's
better
all-
than people.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in you, sir.
Lizards are better than people.
Lizards are better than people.
Nice.
Thank you.
Just shove the man in a fridge. Like,
I think for me, I think I put 1 over 2 just because of the story and it's streamlined. And, I think it's a good introduction to this version of Peter Parker and to Gwen Stacy. Also, I don't have to deal with the romantic issues that they have in the second movie, which just hurts a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you think it hurts you. Think about how it hurts her.
Yo,
at the end of that
I
movie.
mean, Gwen, you should have just kept going to the airport.
Honestly.
Should have just kept going. I hate that, like, by the time we get to the second movie for both love interests, I'm like, girl, just keep going with your life, please. Just keep going.
You said I make Gwen Stacy a coquette. I'm trying to think of different ways to say hoe, trollop, tart.
Well, she wasn't any of those things.
That's what I'm saying. At least Gwen Stacy wasn't that.
Oh.
Like MJ was in the original trilogy. They were
Hitting that
ruining her.
hard.
Right.
Don't
Everybody
know
was
what
hitting.
going
Never
on.
mind.
Del.
Wow.
Oh my God.
We already talked about the chemistry between
It's
Andrew
fantastic.
Garfield and
It
Emma
is.
Stone. It's fantastic. They're great
Um,
together. Even his reveal that he's Spider-Man, like,
Yeah, there's
so
something
good.
smooth to that. He shouldn't have done that. Like, if Tobey Maguire wants to reveal to MJ and like Spider-Man 3 that he's Spider-Man,
He should have by that point.
right?
Yeah.
But
Oh, well, she knew by that point.
She knew.
right. Okay, she found out.
Because
in
Go
2.
Get Him Tiger is the end of 2, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that line. By
And
the
it
way.
ends on that really sad shot of her in his apartment.
It's like, oh right, this is gonna suck.
Yeah.
But he should not reveal to Gwen in this moment that he's Spider-Man.
Probably
That's
not.
their first date.
If you want to call it a
Okay,
date.
see, the thing is, I kind of
supposed to be a date. It
respect
didn't
that
go well.
he did, though.
That's,
Because
mm.
there's something to be said for, this is the big thing about me that you need to know going in. And then you can decide where to go from there. I like that.
I like that in a case of, not a secret identity. There are things that you definitely need to know about people going in.
We'll never stop going in.
I am a serial killer. I'm into race play. Blah, blah, blah. Things of
These
that
are
nature.
very weird, specific things for
They
you
are.
to have.
Yes, they are.
Please.
You want
But
to fast forward some?
I'm Spider-Man is not a first date reveal because you're in high school, you're on a first date. Chances are she's not the one. And are you going to do this in all your first dates? We established Peter gets a lot of girls.
He does get a lot
That's
of
a lot
girls.
of people who know who you are because they went on a date with you once.
I feel like the difference would be
Tell
how-
your aunt first.
He should have told his
Well,
aunt.
yes.
It's too soon. Stop it, Peter.
I just think I love the fact that she's like, I'm the first in the
Yeah.
class.
She mad smart.
I love that interaction in the lab where she's like, oh, this is Peter Parker. He's second in his class
Mhm.
at Midtown Magnet, Science Magnet or whatever.
Right.
And he's like, are you sure I'm the second? And she's like, yeah, I'm very sure. And I'm just like, yeah, go ahead, Gwen. You know who's number one.
When he becomes Spider-Man, after he's done acting like a drug addict on a train.
I actually love that scene.
I hate that scene.
I love that scene.
When he gets his suit and is going after carjackers. From that point forward, super dope. I love this Spider-Man.
The snarkiness.
The way
is
he's toying with
amazing.
people, the sarcasm, like, don't dress like a car thief, man.
Mm-hmm.
You found my
Knives.
weakness.
You found
It's
my
small
weakness.
knife. Oh, I kept talking when we were watching it about the red light on his web shooters.
Yeah.
It's super dope to me, especially with the darkness of the scene, just like that light glowing. The thing that makes me want to watch this one interact with Deadpool, the fact that he yells crotch before like jumping on that guy crotch first is so stupid. But it's the perfect kind of thing that would make this character work with Deadpool.
A lot of his humor just works with what Deadpool does.
And these are characters that in the comics
Are good friends.
have so many. Well, they're not good friends because Peter Parker doesn't really like them. But
That's
Deadpool
fair.
thinks they're good friends. But
I must be Deadpool.
they have so many of those odd couple buddy stories that Ryan Reynolds has become so good at recently. I would just love to see it. It would be so much fun. I'm swinging it. Like he's enjoying himself and I love it. Even the way that we get to Beta, which he doesn't say,
Yeah.
but the way that we get to Uncle Ben's death, it's not a dude running down the street with a gun and Peter like steps out of the way. It's like, yeah, you were being a dick and then this guy stole from you and walked out. He didn't stick you up. He just grabbed the stuff and then you're like, oh,
Help me out, man.
Help me out. It's like, what am
It's
I
like-
supposed to do? You want me to chase him?
It's like,
Right.
bro, you didn't want to help me out for 2 cents.
Right. You told me to get out of your line because I didn't have 2 cents for some chocolate milk, and now you want me to be a vigilante for you? Like, what do you
And
want
also,
me
like,
to
as
do?
far as this guy knows, Peter's just a guy.
Right.
Like,
Everyone assumes that Peter can just stop thieves. I don't like that Uncle Ben was
Vigilante.
mind your business.
yeah, right.
This man was running. I think he tripped.
He
and the
tripped
gun
and his
fell
gun
out.
It's
fell
like,
out.
Like,
you
he
see
wasn't
that
running. He
gun?
wasn't
No, you
pointing
didn't.
the gun at people. He was just running, and his gun fell out.
Yep.
And you decide you want to grab the gun and do what? You're gonna point it at him until the cops show up? Is that your
Right.
plan, Ben?
Like,
Mind your
just
business.
Pretend you didn't see it and move on.
You're looking for your nephew. Go find your nephew.
Mm-hmm.
There's niggas in the street with guns. You need to get Peter out of here.
Anything else you want to say, Colin? Since this was technically your number 1, 2, we're on 2.
Nah, it slaps. I don't understand why this duology that should have been more sometimes gets maligned.
We're at the point where people are doing the same things with these movies as they did with the prequels of Star Wars, where suddenly people are like, "Oh, those movies were really good."
I don't hear that a lot.
I do.
I hear from you guys, but
I'm starting to see that a lot more on like
Oh, nice.
Twitter and stuff because there's something new to hate. So
right.
you know how it be.
Also, the store's clerk his name is T-Bone,
That's a
which
choice.
means nothing and like doesn't do anything to the movie's
Except there was a
quality.
joke.
But it's just like, why this nigga's named T-Bone?
I mean, I think that's the joke in the movie. Doesn't he look at his name tag and it's like T-Bone?
You should. All right, let's get to the Universal.
No, we're not on number 1. We're on Demi's number 2.
My number 2 was Homecoming.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
we're at that
cool,
point
cool,
of
cool.
the
Me and
list.
Dallas have the same top
We're
3.
just, Timmy and I are just sharing a list at
Okay,
this point.
cool.
All right, our number 1s. Do you guys think we can say it at the same time? Full title, okay? 3, 2, 1.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
The objectively best Spider-Man
Yeah,
movie.
this is like, here's the thing, right? We've had this discussion on the podcast, off the podcast. I am a firm believer that there is no such thing as objectivity in art. That
Same.
something is good if you like it, it's bad if you don't.
Same.
Fuck the rules, it doesn't matter. That said, Into the Spider-Verse is objectively the best Spider-Man movie ever made. There's just no question. You can't argue that. Like, if you want to argue that, watch the What's Up Danger scene and shut the fuck up. Like, it's just,
Go argue with your mama.
it's that scene in particular. It just hits harder than
Now
most.
that is my favorite Miles Morales scene in anything ever.
100%.
It's so
It's
good.
one of my favorite scenes in anything ever. It's just like,
It's so good.
That scene is so
Ooh.
iconic. When you play Miles Morales, you have to try
Oh,
to
yeah.
replicate it at least once.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, directed by Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, shout out Peter Ramsey, we talked about you last week, and Rodney Rothman. It was written by Phil Lord and Rodney Rothman. Phil Lord, along with Chris Miller, I want to say his name is Chris,
yes.
wrote the Lego Movie, The Jump Streets, and the Spider-Verse sequel that's coming out.
Woo.
And then Rodney Rothman wrote Grudge Match and 22 Jump Street. Shout out to all the people we just named, because you're all dope. You gave us the best Spider-Man movie.
Ever.
And I love the fact that the best Spider-Man movie is about Miles Morales.
Yo.
Because we had seen Peter so many times, and I love Peter Parker. I remember when the trailer came out for this movie, and I was thinking, we're getting a Miles movie, but also, this is animated? And I was a bit worried because animation never gets the respect it should, and that means that this movie wasn't going to be, put up on the pantheon of, like, superhero movies and blah, 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 blah. But I was like, this looks super dope.
Yeah.
When I saw the Nikes at the train station in the hood, and I think in the trailer I think he shouts Brooklyn when he jumps or something.
He
like that.
does.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, this is going to be my favorite Spider-Man movie. And it is. It's so good.
It's just such a great movie.
It's-
Everything about it works.
Yeah.
To the point where, like,
It works. It really works.
on Twitter recently, there was like somebody was, Spider-Man's coming out. So Twitter accounts are starting to do
thing.
what's your, or just in general, what's your favorite Spider-Man movie?
Right.
And I like quote tweeted it and I was like, we're going to have to start asking what's your second favorite Spider-Man movie because Into the Spider-Verse is the best one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like,
it just is.
just ask what the second favorite is because Into the Spider-Verse is the best one.
Yeah,
The story is so good. I love Miles Morales, man. I love his
Yeah.
family life. I love just, this movie's just so good. The soundtrack is great. The visuals,
Cool.
this is my
Oh my
favorite
god.
animation
It's
ever.
unbelievable how good this movie looks.
I love the different art styles that are used in the movie. I love that Miles starts out at a slower frame rate than everybody else, and then he picks up to the same rate once he finally gets good at being Spider-Man.
Right.
It's so good. Everything is so good.
Also,
Everything
soundtrack,
slaps.
fire
This is one of my favorite soundtracks.
all the way through.
Just
It is.
Period. It's so good. And
This-
there's so many people on it that
This was my second favorite soundtrack of that year. The only soundtrack that I liked more than it was the Black Panther soundtrack.
Mm.
it's funny. I am
Ooh.
in
Ah.
a vocal
Mm.
minority because I actually like this one better. there's so many artists on here that I like. Like Jaden Smith is on it, Vince Staples is on it, Corday, Denzel Curry, like rappers from the younger generation that you would think this movie's kind of made for. And then you have people like Nicki Minaj, Lil Wayne, Ty Dolla $ign. Like, it's just such a great hodgepodge. Is that word?
Hodgepodge.
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 Mosh pit, hodgepodge, all that of just music and hip hop in a Spider-Man movie that just chef's kiss.
Also, all the music cues hit really well in this movie as well. Like, I think my favorite music cue outside of "What's Up, Danger," because that's automatically number one. The scene when the world finds out that Spider-Man's dead.
Yo,
I think that's
hits.
That music,
Scared of the Dark.
Yep.
Yes, that music cue is so good, and that song is also just really, really good.
So good.
Also, Zoe Kravitz plays Mary Jane in this movie, so like, yo, word up.
It's just everything.
All
is
the music
good.
cues. The way that you start a riot, which might be my favorite song on that soundtrack, and it's just Ganke walking in, listening to music, and ooh, in here trying to start a riot. Like, this movie introduced me to Duckworth. It's so good.
Also, Brian Tyree Henry, who we love, and we have talked about how much we love this man.
Of course.
Podcast. He does a fantastic job as Miles' dad. The scene at the door
Ooh.
when Miles is tied up and he can't say anything, and his dad is just like, "I see greatness in you," and just like, oh, it's such a good scene.
Isn't that leads into What's Up, Danger?
Yep.
Yes.
Like, that's a solid like 10 minutes of just perfect cinema.
It's so good, and even the like
10 minutes. That entire movie is just
Well, I mean,
perfect
yes,
cinema.
but
like that segment of it, the way he says, and they call back to like, "I love you," but you don't have to say it back. And the pain he must be feeling to know his son is in there, but not know that his son can't respond to him.
yeah,
It just feels like he's not responding.
Not responding, and it's like, Brian Tyree Henry was killing this.
also
voice
just
actor.
like that scene, because I think the way it starts when he said like something's happened,
right,
Because
that
he's trying to tell him about
hits.
Aaron dying.
like, ooh,
The
you can
emotion
hear
in
the
this
pain
movie.
in that.
Mahershala Ali as
Right, like-
Aaron Davis.
Oh my god.
Mahershala. It's so funny because we just talked about Donald Glover's Aaron Davis.
Yeah.
And these characters could not be more different.
No.
Oh my
I love
god.
them both. But Mahershala, his relationship with Miles, like Miles can go to his place when he's having trouble or he doesn't want to talk to his parents. Like he
Mhm.
runs over to his Uncle Aaron's house. That first scene when he's running there and Biggie starts playing, oh my God, it's so good. And it's like kind of diegetic, kind of not, because they show, I don't know, music gear terms, but like the music player that Aaron is turning on, he's turning up the music. So it's like it's diegetic in that way, but also it's just the score for Peter running through New York and just Miles running through New York. It's so good. But their relationship is great. It feels realistic the way he's talking to him. Like, man, you ain't got no game. Like it's so authentic
Also,
in so many different ways.
Also, there is a Donald Glover cameo in that
Yes,
scene.
the community shot.
Ooh, also, on another note, Liv.
Yo.
One of the best
God,
Donald
she's
cameos.
good.
That reveal.
Oh,
Such a good reveal.
oh my god.
It's probably my favorite reveal of anything ever because her character's already amazing. It's on the level of Vulture being Liz's dad, where I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've seen this movie. I'll be conservative and say 100 times. And you notice stuff in the background, like you can see the Doc Ock arms in her office before that. Yeah.
It's all
Obviously,
very small hints.
Yeah, you wouldn't be looking for it. But the way he says, what did you say your name was? When she says Dr. Olivia Octavius, the gasp that came out of my body. It's such a great reveal.
And Catherine Hahn does a great
performance.
She's so
like,
good.
The way she says it, and then she just slowly stands up, puts her hair up, and then the arms come out. And the action scene that follows is amazing too. The action looks dope. You have Peter B. Parker, Jake Johnson being hilarious the whole time. Everything is fine, Peter, while he's getting thrown around.
This is the movie that made me a Catherine Hahn fan.
It's funny because I've always liked her. But yeah, after this movie, I love her.
Yeah.
She's so good. Even other scenes is a really minor thing. And I don't know why the delivery, like, I love it so much. But the way Liev Schreiber as Kingpin, also great, despite his ridiculous character design.
Oh my god.
When he says, I killed Spider-Man, why did I just see 2 more? There's something about the way that she says there's 3, actually. Her voice has this kind of intrigue and excitement. I think like her scientist side is like, there's actually 3 of them.
And I want to find out why.
Right. Catherine Hahn.
Speaking of there being 3 spider people, Gwen Stacy, played by Haley Steinfeld.
This movie made me love Haley Steinfeld.
I had already been a fan of Haley Steinfeld before this. And Haley Steinfeld is a really good voice actor. She's great as Gwen in this movie.
She's fantastic.
She's fantastic on Arcane.
She's Vi,
She's on
right?
Arcane?
She's Vi. Yeah, she plays Vi.
didn't know
She's
that.
so
so
good. on that. Yeah, Haley Steinfeld is amazing. I already loved Gwen Stacy because Gwen Stacy is cool, and also it basically, if it's not made by Sony, Gwen Stacy is typically played by Dove Cameron. So like I already loved Gwen Stacy because I had an attachment to her as played by Dove Cameron. So Haley Steinfeld, I'm just like, yes, it's so nice that two actresses that I like love are Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
Like she's so good. And Gowanda, which Colin kept calling Bryce Dallas Howard throughout the entirety of Spider-Man 3.
Yep.
Yeah, I love her. I love the relationship that she has with Miles, and I can't wait for them to like dive in deeper with that because it is usually a romance, if I remember correctly. Miles and Gwen usually end up together. I'm excited about that. And I just love their chemistry together. It's so good. And also when she has to shave the side of her head, it's
Yeah.
You don't get to like my haircut. That whole scene. And it's one of those things that rewatching it makes scenes hit different.
Yeah.
The way that he gets stuck to her and she's telling him just relax because she knows
She's trying to
why
tell
he's
him how
stuck
to
to
do
her.
it.
Like, hey, relax and your hands will unstick. In the moment, we don't know who she is. It's just, I mean, we know who she is, but like we don't know why she's actually telling him that. It's just like, hey, man, just relax, which is something you would say. Everything hits different.
We were talking about Peter B. Parker, but also the first Peter Parker.
I want to talk about him. Yes, Demi's favorite, Chris
Pine.
Chris Pine is such a good Peter Parker.
Again,
He doesn't get a lot of time.
the Renaissance Chris.
But man, he makes it work. Like his little ad libs when he's fighting everybody. And like, I want to say it's the giant goblin that he's fighting. And he's looking there. He's just like, I am so tired. He gets up.
These Peter Parkers are so very different.
Yes.
Like Chris Pine's Peter Parker, which is why you would probably cast Chris Pine, feels like a much more refined Peter Parker.
He would have been a perfect mentor.
Yeah, a much more organized.
And he was ready to do it.
Yeah, that's the guy who you want to be your mentor. And then Jake Johnson plays the more messy, messed up, chaotic Peter Parker. And it's so funny because both of them are so perfect for their individual versions of Peter Parker, even though these are the same guy.
Right. He's older. He's disheveled. He's been through so much.
Got a belly. Wearing sweatpants.
The way he's telling his story. They give him everything. And this movie's so good at exposition.
Oh, their introductory.
Because they do it in a way that's interesting.
Their introduction scenes are amazing.
Right. Everyone has their own art style. And yeah, they're just telling you things, but they're also showing you we can get all these different backstories that quick in a way that still feels real. Also, the fact that they're bringing in things from the comics and they don't shy away from any of it. Like when Gwen is telling her story.
They don't shy away from Spider-Man 3 either.
I love that. I want to get to that. But when Gwen is telling her story, she doesn't say anything about the fact that in her universe, Peter Parker was the lizard and he died. Yeah. But you see that on screen.
In a different art style, which I love.
Right. And it's like, oh, man, they really took that from the comics and didn't need to center on it. We just, here, we know it, you know it, keep it pushing. And yeah, the way that they don't shy away from Spider-Man 3, all the silly stuff, like I did this, and then, yeah, I did this too. It's like the little dance.
Shameik Moore is great as Miles Morales.
He's so good. And the point when this movie came out, I loved Shameik Moore because Dope is such a good movie.
And then we also were fans of
The Get Down.
The Get Down.
Right. And he was in that Wu-Tang show that I watched that time. Like, he's in a bunch of stuff. Wu-Tang was after this. Never mind. He's a really good actor. And he imbues Miles with this, like, you hear in his voice, he's scared, but he wants to do the right thing, but, you know, he's a little out of his depth. He's very good at sounding like a teenager somehow.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny because last week we talked about Chris Pine.
Last week, I think it was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, whenever Rise of the Guardians came out, we talked about Chris Pine playing a teenager and not sounding anything like one. Shameik nailed it with a voice performance.
We were talking about visuals earlier. I love how much it embraces like comic book isms. So you've got like the onomatopoeia that will show up.
Yeah.
And like, I love the way that his Spidey sense works. Like, especially the first time we see the Spidey sense.
The first one. When it just gets quiet and then it says look out behind him. That was so dope.
It's so good.
Like cinema.
This movie.
All the creative choices are so good.
I'm about to hit something because this movie's so good. Like I can't control the feelings in my body. It's just such a good movie.
It's a great film. It's hard to like put into words just like how good everything is in this movie.
Right, because if you ask me to just talk about this movie being dope, I won't stop talking. And we've been talking for so long.
Everything, guys. Everything in this movie is dope.
We didn't even talk about freaking
the
Peter Parker, Penny Parker, Spider-Man Noir, Nicolas
Noir.
Cage being perfectly cast.
He's great.
As black and white Spider-Man.
Also, Aunt May.
Right, Aunt May about that action. She hits Tombstone with a bat.
Coolest Aunt May. Also, I love when she sees Dr. Octavius. Oh, it's Liv. Which just hints at so much backstory that we don't know.
Like, she knows Liv, and she calls her Liv.
Did y'all used to go to lunch together with y'all?
Which also, like, because that awesome reveal that we talked about, he says, oh, let me guess, your friends call you Doc Ock. And she says, actually, my friends call me Liv.
Yes.
My enemies call me Doc Ock.
It's such a great cast. The music is great. The visuals. Like I said, this is my favorite like style of animation because it's all the animation. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
It is all the
We
animation.
get black and white. We get anime. We get watercolor.
And I remember like people not being fond of the fact that it was all of those things. And I was just like, but that's what makes it so cool.
Yeah.
It's all of these things. And it does them all very, very well. It's not like they jam-packed a bunch of stuff in here and it doesn't work.
Right.
It all works really well together. And I'm super excited about the sequel, obviously.
Yup.
Which I think is coming out around my birthday.
Perfect.
And I've never had such an awesome movie birthday. So I'm super excited. That's the downside of having a very early October birthday. You just get horror movies all month, and I don't like horror movies. I'm getting a Spider-Verse movie in October.
I mean,
Yes.
you know the answer to that, right? You have to become a horror fan.
No,
Yeah, like us.
no,
Like
Me and Colin.
Dallas.
No,
not,
it's okay.
Not me.
we're fine.
I am not a horror fan.
Sure, keep saying that. Keep telling yourself that.
We don't believe you.
Right? We don't believe you.
Right.
You're just trying to convince
You
the
prove
audience
it-
at this
you
point.
prove the opposite.
Every time. But yeah, I mean, Into the Spider-Verse isn't just the best Spider-Man movie. It is one of the best comic book movies ever made. One of the best animated movies ever made.
I'm going to say the same thing I said on our dead YouTube channel. We were talking about if this is our favorite Spider-Man movie. This is my favorite superhero movie.
It outdid
Full stop.
Incredibles for you.
Yeah. Which is insane. Because if you know me, and you know how much I love The Incredibles,
A
saying
lot.
that this movie is my favorite superhero movie has a special place in my heart. Because Incredibles slaps. Shout out to Elastigirl.
Just her? You're
Yes,
gonna shout out the
that's
whole
the only
family?
one she's
We don't
getting.
have time to do all that.
No,
That's kind of rude.
no, it's not.
Shout out
It's
to
The
Elastigirl.
Incredibles, not Elastigirl and everybody else. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's what The Incredibles 2 was.
True.
I don't even know what they're going to do for the second one. I'm not sure if you can top this first one because this first one is magic.
tough.
It's magic. Just the what's up danger scene, man. Just, I don't know if you've ever read the script. I have the script on my computer. I downloaded it because it was nominated for an Oscar, so it became publicly available for people to download.
Nice.
I've read that scene before, and it hits even in writing.
Oh, yeah.
I love the way that it's described. That's why I have it on my phone, or I have access to it on my phone.
I've seen it on a Screenplayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's great because what they do is that they'll
You watch the
scroll
scene
the
as it's
screen
going.
up right as the scene is above it. The way they describe his movement.
And it's such a very short part of the script. Miles walks to the edge of the roof, the wind buffeting, and leaps. The camera is upside down. Miles isn't falling through the frame. He's rising. And I
Yeah.
just like, when I read that the first time, I was like, whew. I was like, yo, that's so good. It's just so good. Like, if that can do that to you on the script page,
Right.
man, like on screen, it's incredible.
The way that they bring so many different things from comic books, different cultures. Scorpion speaks exclusively in Spanish.
Yeah.
And we don't need an explanation for that. He just does. And he looks dope while doing it. John Mulaney kills it. This movie came out before I was a John Mulaney fan.
Yeah.
Then I became a huge John Mulaney fan. And now I love it even more. Kimiko Glenn, who I didn't know before this movie, kills it as Penny Parker. Liev Schreiber plays a really great New York kingpin. Everything's so good. Only thing that's not good, and it's not the movie's fault, is that his dad's name is Jefferson Davis.
Yeah, that.
I don't know why Marvel did that. I'll never know why Marvel did that. Maybe it was like, we're going to take it back, but like, is that something we need to take back? Jefferson Davis?
No, we don't. And I just, how do you take that? I don't think that's a thing you take back.
Right, it's a dude's name.
Because also,
like,
there are still plenty of people who still think the Confederacy was great for some reason.
yeah.
They're wrong.
For those who don't
But-
know, Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederate States during the Civil War. So, odd choice on Marvel's part
Maybe
to name this
whoever
black man Jefferson Davis.
created the character didn't know that.
There's no way.
It's possible. Like, I didn't know that when this movie came out, but
What? Even if you
that's a weird
as
thing.
the
like,
creator
it's a weird coincidence.
didn't know that, it's going to go through other people.
Right. It
and
feels like a reference.
It feels like none of them knew. Like, I don't buy that. I can buy one person not. But a team
Right. Nobody was like, wait. Jefferson Davis? It's a weird thing.
is real weird.
Shout out to Daniel Pemberton, who did the score. And he's done the score for a lot of movies I like.
Hmm.
To me, he did King Arthur with your boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that movie has a really dope score, too.
He's really good. I like Daniel Pemberton. There's so much that could be said about this movie. We don't have that time to do
No.
that.
We've said enough that you know it's the best one.
Let's recap our list real quick. Dallas, your top 5?
All right, let's do it. Number 5, Spider-Man. Number 4, Spider-Man 2. Number 3, Spider-Man Far From Home. Number 2, Spider-Man Homecoming. And number 1, of course, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Number 5, Spider-Man 1. Number 4, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Number 3, Spider-Man 3. Number 2, Amazing Spider-Man. And number 1, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Mine is honorable mention going to The Amazing Spider-Man. Number 5, Spider-Man 2. Number 4, Spider-Man. Number 3, Spider-Man Far From Home. Number 2, Spider-Man Homecoming. And number 1, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Thank you guys for joining us. It's been a very long episode. Let us know what your ranking is for the Spider-Man movies. And let us know how long it took you to get Spider-Man tickets because, dear God, it took me 3 hours and it wasn't fun. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoy Spider-Man No Way Home. We can't wait to see it. Next time you hear from us, we will be giving our review of the film.
Demi will definitely have seen it.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of
I
these
hope
people.
that we will, but at this point, who knows? I'm going to see it. I don't know if I'm going to see it by the time we review it, but Demi will hold it down if not. But yeah, answer all those questions for her in the comments. And if Spider-Verse is not your number 1, explain yourself in the comments. Or hit us on Twitter at y'all_different, Instagram and Tumblr at Creative Differences Podcast, or Facebook.com/Creative Differences PC. As always, thank you, Crown Digital, Brandon, and Io. You put us on Spotify. You put us on Apple Podcasts. Demi, you put us on YouTube, so thank you for that. And thank you for editing this long-ass episode. And for vibing with me, because our lists are the same except our number 4 and 5 are switched.
Yep.
Yeah, they're the same. Colin.
Thank you for being different.
Thank you for putting the difference in creative differences, but also you and I have the same number 5 and number 1. And then it's like a sandwich for which we use the same bread, but everything in the middle is different.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, this was just so much fun. I love Spider-Man. Audience, if you want to talk to me about how Catherine Hahn is the best Doc Ock, you can hit me up on Twitter and or Instagram at the King Named Simba.
If you want to talk to me about other great works of cinema, such as 2018's Venom, I'm mostly mentioning that because Dallas is wearing a Venom shirt.
I am.
You can find me on Twitter at Duck McGuck.
And if you guys want to talk to me about how all of the Spider-Men are valid in their own ways, you guys can talk to me on Twitter and Instagram at Dreamy Films. Dreamy is spelled DREEMI. Thanks again for joining us.
I respect that. Also, if you want to find Gabby's ranking, ask her on Twitter at Birthday Suit Lady.
Suit Lady.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like
thank you.
that.
It's been different. Bye.
So are you guys going to be able to see this movie or...
Okay, here's the thing.
I guess we'll find out.